Hi, guys. Welcome to our podcast, A Court of Heaven and Hell. I'm Lauren, also known as Heaven.
And I'm Ellie, and I'm also known as Hel. And we are a book podcast based on Sarah J. Maas's fantasy romance novels, A Court of Thorns and Roses, Throne of Glass, and Crescent City. So we want to start off this episode by addressing the leaks.
Yeah.
Boo, that sucks. But if you don't know, basically, Crescent City 3 got leaked online. There's still, as of today, when we're recording this, there's still 19 days left to go. So we wanted to go ahead and let y'all know we have not looked at the leaks. We literally are not going to because we want to wait. So if you're worried about being on Book Talk, being on Bookstagram, or listening to any kind of podcast that kind of is covering Crescent City right now, you're safe here. We're not going to be talking about any of the leaks. We don't know them. So I just wanted to go ahead and throw that out because we were pretty upset about it. And it
Yeah.
just kind of sucks because it affects everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's see. So if you haven't already heard our Crescent City 1 recap video of House of Earth and Blood, go ahead and listen to that because, obviously House of Sky and Breath is based on that, and that's the book we will be covering in this episode. Our next episode after this one is going to be our theories video,
I'm so excited.
we're very excited about. We are so excited. It's probably going to be our best episode yet because we can kind of unleash ourselves a little bit
Yeah. Yeah.
and show how much, like, just how obsessed we are with these books.
Very.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, just to let you guys know, you can find our podcast currently on all major podcast platforms. But if you don't see your favorite on the list, make sure you reach out to us and let us know. You can email us. Our email will be in the description. Our video version is available on YouTube, and we would love it if you guys could rate, share, like, comment, subscribe. All of these things are going to help us grow this community. We are still very new, but we just really are, so excited and we want to share this with you guys. So the more you guys comment, like the more that we can build this community up. Let's see. In this episode, we will be doing our recap summary of Crescent City 2, A House of Sky and Breath, like Ellie said. So there is some spoiler warnings. I should let you know. This episode may contain spoilers for the entire Maasverse, including Throne of Glass and ACOTAR, as well as obviously the first Crescent City novel. We highly, highly recommend that you have read all of her books before you dive into this with us. This is more of like a recap or refresher for people who, maybe read the books a while ago and have forgotten a lot, or maybe you read the books recently, but you just need a little bit help understanding some of the more confusing things that are going on because it is a lot in this book. The last book was a lot, but this book is just like on a whole nother level. So, like I said, this is more for people like that. So we highly recommend that you read those first. And then if you haven't, go read them, finish them, and then come back and enjoy this episode. It will still help you understand, even if it's after CC3 has come out. So I also want to go ahead and say a content warning. Please look in the show notes for any content or trigger warnings. This is an adult podcast, so we will be using some explicit language and talking about some, I don't know the word for it.
We're
I
going to be
lost the
talking,
word.
okay.
Some grown-up content.
Yes,
Like,
it's going
yeah.
to be, yeah, there's darker to this book again.
There
So
you go. Yeah.
yeah, just check our show notes. We will put in content warnings. And if you don't want to hear cussing, we are not the podcast for you.
Sorry, guys. I have a potty mouth, so yeah.
Yeah, we like to get into the storyline.
It
So
helps with our expression, okay?
yeah, for sure. It's fine. Anyway, we will go ahead and start getting into some of the newer terms that we were introduced to in this book.
All right, guys. So a little bit of information on some new terms you need to know for this book going into it. We have Ophian. I think it's Ophian.
I think
Uh,
it's Ophian, but
yeah.
I'm not going to pronounce it right either. Sorry, y'all.
When I read it as Ophian, but when I listened to the audiobook, I think she said Ophian. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. So, okay, anyways. Mispronunciations, expect them throughout the whole podcast. Anyway, so Ophion is a rebel organization who wants to basically remove the Asteri from power. They don't believe that they are supposed to be like above us and they want to take them out. Then you have Lightfall. This is the elite unit of Ophion. You have Karis, which is an offshoot of Ophion. So it's still a rebel organization, but they're like kind of a portion of Ophion. We have Second Light. Second Light is the raw, unfiltered magic that appears as pure, undiluted light emitted from or a veneer when their remains are siphoned after their death. First Light is the counterpart. So First Light is what they get when they do the drop and they donate a little bit of that First Light to the city. Second Light is something that they get after a veneer has died. And then we have the Triari. Triari was a term that was mentioned in the first book, but I'm just like a refresher. I'm not sure if we talked about it in our recap episode. So a Triari is basically the personal armies of the governors of Lunathian. So Micah had a Triari, Sandriel had a Triari, and that continues in this book. And then you have the Sailing, which is, as you guys know, was also in the first book, but it is the sending of the body down the Istros River to the bone quarter when a veneer passes, and they're either deemed worthy and they go to the bone quarter, or they're deemed unworthy and their boat flips into the river. And then we have Mystic, which is a person with certain gifts that allows them to see different worlds. That's going to be pretty important in this book. And I think that's a new term. And then finally, we have, oh no, that was it. Sorry. So we, the last thing though is that they are usually sold into slavery and then they need to be in a group of 3 to work. So mystics are different veneer who were sold to a person who then uses them to communicate and look into different worlds. It has to be 3 of them at a time in order for it to work. And they are always a male, a female, and then a non-binary person, basically. And yeah, that's it.
Cool.
That's what you need to know.
Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and just do a quick summary of like the very ending of House of Earth and Blood, because I don't know, maybe it'll help. But
Yeah.
basically at the very ending, Bryce and Hunt, they kill 2 archangels, Micah and Sandriel. And basically the Asteri threaten them and they're like, if you tell anyone that you killed 2 archangels, or if you use your new starborn powers, we will find you and we will kill you and everyone you love. And they're basically told that they have to lay low, not, be in the public eye. And yeah, they basically threaten them, which is what? But yeah, that's kind of where we're left off. And
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna get into the prologue shortly. All right,
Yes.
guys. So this prologue, it came out of nowhere. Okay. If I'm assuming everyone here has read these books, but
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't know what the fuck was going on.
Yeah, no, to say it came out of nowhere is like absolutely correct. It's like you just
Yeah.
pick up the book thinking that you're about to like talk to like or listen, like read about Bryce and all that. And it's
Yes.
just like, who the hell are these people? What the hell is going
Seriously.
on? Yeah.
Okay. This prologue is so long, but I'm going to cut it very short because there's just kind of a few things that are really important that you need to know for like the story plot line of House of Sky and Breath. So basically, we start off by meeting someone named Sophie Renas, and we learn that she is an Ophian rebel. Like Lauren said earlier, basically the Ophian rebellion is a human rebellion against the Asteri, and they want to bring down the Asteri because they kind of fucking suck. But the special thing about Sophie, she has a brother named Emil, and they are both what are called Thunderbirds. Okay, stay with me.
Yeah. Bear with us.
Thunderbirds are kind of confusing because they're humans that have magical abilities, but they're not Vanir. So they are treated like humans, but the thing about Thunderbirds is that they're very rare. They're very rare, and they like only one line of all the Thunderbirds survived, and it's Sophie and Emil. So a little bit of a background about that. So her and her brother Emil, well, he is in a death camp and she's trying to get his ass out. And he's in there with a bunch of other children, and she just, she's trying to get them out for the rebellion. And we also learned that their parents were murdered by dread wolves, which are basically just like wolves that are there to kill humans. So we also learned that the humans have been at war against the Asteri for 15,000 years. And I do want to point out that 15,000 years is important if you have read the Maas verse. So just keep that number in mind, as well as a number 7. Again, those numbers matter.
Super important. Yeah.
I don't know what it's going to mean, but Sarah J. Maas has been planting these numbers throughout her books. Okay, so we learned that the leader of the Ophion rebel group, her name is Pippa Spestos, and she's there on the docks of this death camp with someone called Agent Silverbow. That's the only name that we have of this agent right now. And they're waiting for Sophie and Emil and all the other prisoners to get to the dock so they can get on this little boat and then go to like the main boat where they're going to escape from the shit. And so we also learned during this time that Sophie has really, really, really important information that apparently can bring the Asteri down. And that's why she's being hunted, not just because her and her brother are Thunderbirds, but she also has some type of information that can fuck shit up. Which, like, good for you, sis. And
yeah, for real.
So during this, she's escaping with Emil and all the other children, and they make it to the docks. And Emil and everyone else is getting on the boat. But all of a sudden, someone named the Hind shows up. Okay. The Hind is basically a very powerful assassin who, if she's like a hit woman. I don't really know how to describe her, but if she's coming after you, you know that you're dead. She is very feared throughout this world. She, like, you don't want to mess with this bitch. Like, she'll kill you.
She's the worst. Like, she will torture you and then kill you.
Yes, she is known for torturing too. Like, that's her vibe. So she shows up with a bunch of everyone else that's against this fucking rebellion and whatever. So she shows up, all like the guards of like the prison are like coming after them. There's a bunch of like fucking ships that show up to try to get them. And Emil is like, nah, bitch. And he fucking shoots whatever his Thunderbird powers are, which I don't really understand what they are, but apparently it's kind of similar to electricity, but it's not lightning and it's not like Bryce's light. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that is kind of interesting that it's both lightning and light, but it's not Hunt and it's not Bryce's light. Like,
I don't know. It's something completely different apparently, and it's apparently very powerful because he takes out all these fucking ships that are coming after them, and he's able to escape on this little boat with all the other prisoners and Sophie and Agent Silverbow, who, by the way, he gets shot with like this bullet that's made out of, I forgot the name.
I think it's Gorsian. Yeah.
Gorsian. So the Gorsian is, I think it's a metal. I don't know. But basically, if you're shot with it, you can't use your magical abilities. So he's kind of fucked. Anyway, they get on this small boat, but Sophie gets captured by the fucking Hind. Okay, she's fucked. Like, this shit's over. But she's like, you know what? It's cool. My brother got away. It's fine.
Yeah.
So she's captured by the Hind, and the Hind is like asking her what she knows, and she's not giving up the information that she knows. So the Hind's like, well, this information has to die with you. So she straps her to this cinder block and throws her ass in the fucking ocean. And that's literally what the prologue is.
Yeah. All right. Yes. So after the prologue, we jump back into our world that we were kind of introduced to in the last book. Obviously, it's the same world, but this is like back to our usual programming, our usual characters. So we are here at part 1. It's called The Chasm. So, as we enter the book, we start off at the ballet with Bryce and her parents. They're there to watch Juniper, Bryce's one of Bryce's best friends, dance. She's finally getting her opportunity to be the lead in the ballet. And so they're all there to support her. At this time, we find out that Bryce and Hunt have an agreement to wait to be intimate until the winter solstice, which is going to be about like 9 months away. I forget, they have it down to the minute, like how much longer they're waiting until they can be together. We also learned, oh, I'm sorry, 4 months away. We also learned that Bryce is relatively famous since we left her off in Crescent City. Everybody knows that she saved the city last spring, even if they don't really know the details of everything and how it went down. It's still a secret that she killed Micah, but they know that she was there to save the city. There's only so much they could hide about that. After the ballet, I'm sorry, I should also mention that everybody knows as well that she's a Fae princess, because if you remember in the last book, Sandriel dropped the bomb that Bryce was the Autumn King's daughter. So now everybody knows that she's not just some half human, half Fae, that she's actually like royal. After the ballet, we go to Rune's house where he's throwing a party. At this point, he hooks up with this random shifter, despite being betrothed to Hypaxia. And we learn that they haven't really had much contact since last spring. Hypaxia doesn't really seem to be that interested in Rune. And Rune likes Hypaxia, but he's not about to like pursue her knowing that she's not interested in him. While we're at the party, Hunt finds out from Isaiah that they have selected the new governor, and she is also an archangel named Celestina. Hunt questions why the Asteri would choose her based on her experience. She kind of comes from this small like province or country where she didn't really have like much power. Like she was in charge, but it's not like a big territory where she would be this powerful like archangel that everyone fears, like Micah and Sandriel. It's much more like she didn't even have her own triari. Like she was just kind of there ruling in much more of a peaceful kind of place. So Hunt's kind of like, why would they bring her of all people to Crescent City to be in charge? Like when this is such a big like opportunity. Let's see. Okay, at this point, we're at the party and we get to meet Cormac. Cormac enters the party in style. He pops in through a portal, and we learn that the Autumn King has promised Bryce to him. So it's gonna be that they are gonna get married. And I know. And the Autumn King arranged this. So he comes and in the audiobook, he's got this like sexy Scottish accent. He's
I loved
like,
that.
no, me too. I was like, when I read
I
the
was
book, I
like,
did not picture that at all.
shout out to the person who reads the audiobooks for this because she does an amazing job. I
She
wish I knew
really
her
does.
name. I'm gonna look up her name just to be like, I love you, bitch. You're
Yeah,
fantastic.
she kills it. Like the
No,
second
what
that
is
she
her
starts
name?
talking
Sec.
in Cormac's like Scottish accent, I was like, I wasn't the biggest fan of Cormac, but this voice is kind of hot.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to find her name. I'm on my Audible right now. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
Elizabeth Evans. She also did Throne of Glass. I love
Okay.
her. She's so
Yes.
good. Okay, anyway,
Yay. Yay,
Elizabeth Evans,
Elizabeth.
we love you.
Yeah,
Okay.
seriously. No, thank you for bringing this
Shout
to
out.
life because you did like such a good
Yeah.
job. But
Anyway.
okay. Yeah. So we also find out that Rune and Cormac have mutual dislike of each other. They know each other. They're cousins. And basically, when they were younger, Cormac believed that he was going to be the chosen one that Rune is. And he kind of is still bitter about the fact that he ended up beating him and he got the Star Sword. And so Cormac and him still just like don't like each other. I guess it's probably important to say that Cormac's father rules over Avalon, and then Rune's father rules over Valbera. So they are both are Fey royalty, but they're from like different, once again, provinces, territories, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
I will also say that the Avalon Fae are very much more traditional, and they have like a lot of like, they're not as futuristic as the Valbaran Fae. So just something to keep in mind. He also possesses shadow abilities as well as some other things, and he's his cousin through his mom. So they are direct cousins through Rune's mother, but he's also Bryce's cousin, like in a very distant relationship from the past. One of Bryce's ancestors, like King Einar's ancestors through the past, was related to Cormac's ancestors. So technically they're also like distant cousins, but not like ruining him. They're much closer. Bryce thinks that the Autumn King might be trying to bait Hunt into causing a scene. So she's kind of like, like, don't act crazy. This is what he wants. Bryce and Hunt head home at that point, and when they walk in the door, Bryce is kind of having flashbacks. She smells blood. She's like, something's not right. The door's ajar. She's like kind of freaking out because the last time that this happened, we know what she walked into. But when she walks into the apartment, she finds Ethan on her floor, bleeding and hurt. And he's messed up and they don't really know what is going on. So do we find out what happens? No. I guess I don't think we said this earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and make a little statement now. This book switches points of view every 2 seconds, you guys. So please bear with us. Like, it's literally like
Yeah.
Rune's talking, and then the next second this person's talking, and then the next second like we're learning about what's going on in this part of the city, and then it's like it is all over the place. There probably is a better way to organize it, but we're just going along with the way that
It's fine.
it is in the book. So just bear with me if all of a
Yeah.
sudden we're switching point of views to somebody else, because that's literally how it is when you're reading it.
Mhm.
So that's the end of the chapter. Okay, so we switch over to Therion's point of view and discover that the River Queen is pissed at him because he upset her daughter. He upset her because he was like just out on the beach sunbathing. And if you remember what we were talking about in the first recap, Therion is like hot, hot. So while he's on this beach, like people are taking pictures of him and everyone's like, oh my God, it's Therion. Like, I can't believe it's on the beach. It's so hot. And the tabloids are writing about it. And this like makes the River Queen's daughters jealous because she's like, everybody's like fawning over you and blah, 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 blah. She's very jealous, as we learn throughout this book. And so that kind of sets her on edge. So to punish him, the River Queen basically assigns him to this like mission to find out what happened to Sophie. Sophie from the prologue. I was like, I didn't want to like get ahead of myself, but I was like, okay, no, it is to find Sophie.
Yeah.
So she learned of what happened to Sophie through the currents. So basically, the river tells her like the gossip. And so the river told her that like there's this, girl.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
like in the ocean, and like she sits there to investigate it.
I
That part is kind of funny.
I don't know what it is about Sarah J. Maas, but she really likes to throw in like a character that likes to gossip.
Oh yeah,
If
100%.
you know, you know.
That's so true. That is very much her MO. So when Therion gets there, he finds where her body was left, but he's like notices that her shackles have been unlocked. So her body's not there. And instead of like, at first they think like, oh, the river creatures ate it or she imploded from the pressure underwater. But Therion catches this detail that's like, no, her shackles are actually unlocked. So she probably like got away. She didn't just die down here. And he reports that back to the River Queen. And then the River Queen is like, you need to find her. I need you to find her. So that's where we leave Therion. And then we go back to the apartment and we learn that Ethan was attacked by Sabine and Amelie. We find,
Boo!
I know, I
Sorry.
fucking hate them. No, it's okay. Like, I literally hate
They're the
them. Like, they
worst.
were the worst in the first book, and they're still fucking showing up to be the worst
Yeah.
in this book.
Calm
Like,
down. Y'all need
nothing
to
has
go
changed.
go away. Please.
They're awful. I'm like, y'all are just miserable people. But what happened is that Ethan basically spoke to a journalist and he was like, no, like Bryce is awesome. Like she saved the city last year, and Sabine was the one who told us not to go help. And like Bryce was the one who was helping. And so he defended Bryce and basically trash talked Sabine. And Sabine did not take too kindly to that, because when you're in a pack, you're really not supposed to talk about like the leader, especially like that. But also, she hates Bryce more than anything in this fucking world. So, of course, she's going to be pissed at him for defending him. But they didn't just kick him out of the pack, like, they tried to kill him. And it was actually Amelie's little sister, Perry, who got Ethan away and got him to the apartment because she used to be friends with Danica too. So she knew where Danica lived. So she took him there because she thought it would be the only safe place for him. So I guess what you need to know from there is that Ethan has officially been kicked out of the pack and he's kind of like a packless wolf at this point. Bryce decides that Ethan can stay with her since she has nowhere else to go. And then for some reason, I'm sorry, I love Bryce Adelaide Quinlan, but when I read this part, I was just like,
Yeah.
what the hell? Like the way I was just like, first of all, why? Second of all, what are you thinking? But okay. So Bryce has this like white couch that she's like in love with. She doesn't want anything to happen to it. So she doesn't want Ethan to sleep on the couch because she doesn't want it to get dirty. And so instead of having Hunt sleep with her and Ethan sharing the guest room, she decides that she's like, oh, my bed's big enough. Ethan can sleep in my room tonight. And so Hunt is kind of like, and she's like, no, this is what's going to happen. And then they end up like Ethan ends up sharing the bed with her. Nothing happens between the two of them, obviously, but she like kind of, we find out that she has like a lot of guilt about like how she left things with Ethan and she kind of just wanted to watch over him and make sure she was okay or he was okay. So we understand it, but at the same time, I'm just like,
Yeah.
no. And also, I would choose to share a bed with Hunt over Ethan. I'm sorry. Okay.
Same.
I don't dislike Ethan or anything. Ethan's cool. And I
Yeah, no,
like,
Hun is more my type, so
yeah, hell
yeah.
yeah. Hunt's my guy. So Rune goes to the Autumn King to try to stand up for Bryce and tell him that she's not interested in marrying Cormac. And while she's doing this, Cormac is actually there and he throws some jabs at Rune about Hypaxia and like the status of their relationship. And then this is where we learn that she is not actually well liked by the other witches due to her being a necromancer. So this is a callback to the first book when Hypaxia shared that she had unusual tutors. They were unusual because they were actually dead. So it was like her using her necromancer abilities to reanimate these people who know all these old histories and have all this knowledge, and then they were the ones who taught her. That's why she was sent away to that like private island by her mother, and why the other witches don't want her to be in power. This ability is not common and it's actually kind of taboo in the witch culture. We then find out that Hypaxia has a half sister named Lydia, and that half sister is the Hind. I don't know if you remember 2 seconds ago when Ellie was talking about what a crazy ass bitch this woman is, but like she's not somebody that I would look and be like, oh, this person should be in power. But they're like, she's better than a necromancer. So once they found out that she technically could be in power, they decided that she should be, and they really don't want Hypaxia. So from there, we switch back to Bryce. While she's at work, we find out that she no longer works for Jezebel. However, Jezebel is kind of still around. So Bryce can still call on her, but she doesn't work in the gallery anymore. She doesn't work directly under Jezebel. She works at the Fate Archives now. Cormac shows up and tells Bryce that the Oracle told him that they were destined to be wed and that they're mingling. Sorry, that's literally the word that they use in the book, but their mingling would bring great prosperity to their people. So that's disgusting to me. But, anyways, he drops that little bomb on her. Bryce is like, I don't really care. I have no interest in being engaged to you. Like, I don't want to be with you, whatever. So we move on from there and we go back to the Legion headquarters where Hunt is meeting Celestina for the first time. Remember, Celestina is the archangel who's taking over for Micah. She definitely seems too good to be true. She promises Hunt that he can keep living with Bryce and that he doesn't have to live at the headquarters with the rest of the angels. She actually tells all of the angels that they can live wherever they choose. Isaiah also wants to be in a private residence, but Naomi is like, I can't afford to live anywhere else, so I'm going to stay here. She tells Isaiah that she considers him a free man, even though he's still a slave. Because remember, at the end of the last book, Hunt had his slave tattoo removed, and he is no longer technically a slave. He's literally a free citizen. But Isaiah, unfortunately, still has his tattoo, and he still is a slave. But Celestina tells him, like, I don't consider you as that. When you're working for me, you're a free man. And then she also promised him that she was going to continue to work towards getting his freedom, like, legally. Like I said, sounds kind of too good to be true, but she seems lax and like she may be a fair leader. Hunt is still kind of questioning it. And then she drops the bomb on them just out of nowhere that Sandriel's old Triari is actually going to be joining their ranks because Ephraim, the other archangel who's taking over for Sandriel, he already had his own Triari, so he didn't want to take on all of Sandriel's Triari and have this huge group of people. So half of Sandriel's Triari is going to go be under Celestina, while the other half is going to work under Ephraim. So the way that this gets split up is that the Hind and the Harpy go to work for Ephraim, and then the Hound and the Hammer, which is Pollux and Baxian, they go to work for Celestina. Yes, they kind of all suck.
I
Like all
fucking
of
hate
Sandriel's
Pollux.
oh, he's the worst.
He's the worst.
I'm
I
like,
hate
is
him.
he the worst character? And I don't know, because Micah's pretty bad. There's a
I'd have
lot
to
of
think about it,
shitty
but like
characters.
he's definitely in the top 5 worst characters ever.
Absolutely. He
I
doesn't have
can't.
redeeming qualities. This guy's
He's a
a
terrible
jackass.
person.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Hunt also feels the same way. Hunt is like,
Mhm.
dude, I fucking hate this guy. I don't want to work with him. I worked with them under Sandriel for 200 fucking years. I finally got away from these motherfuckers. Like, I don't want to work with them. But he doesn't have a choice. So he's got to deal with it. Just to put it shortly, these are Hunt's worst enemies. And now he has to work with them. So as soon as Hunt sees Pollux when he walks into the building, Hunt just jumps on him. Hunt just starts beating the shit out of him, and they begin fighting. And then Hunt actually gets thrown into a cell because of this. Celestine is like, you can't just attack these people. They're your new partners. So she puts him in jail. She calls Bryce, and then Bryce shows up to get Hunt. And while he's in there, like they have this little like kind of showdown, and Bryce is kind of like goes up to Pollux and is like, Pollux is calling her a whore and saying all this messed up shit about her. And then Bryce is just kind of like, whatever, dude, you can't touch me. Like, you're jealous.
Period.
Like, whatever. She has
Yeah.
a badass bitch moment. And then Hunt stands back and kind of lets her do her thing. And then we get one important line from Baxian as they're leaving. And he just happens to casually say to Bryce, like, I'm happy that somebody finally killed Micah.
Huh?
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of taboo. So it's interesting. That's kind of important. We put that in there.
Mhm.
Now we cut back to Therian, and he is in a lab going through Sophie's computer. He finds these conversations between her and somebody by the name of Banshee 50 or Banshee Fan 56. This does kind of come into play later. The emails mention these things called Project Thur, Dust Truth, and a safe harbor that is coded as where the weary souls find relief from their suffering in Lunathian. So this is a place that whoever was communicating with Sophie was telling her, like, if anything goes wrong, go to this place and you'll be safe. And it's where the weary souls find relief from their suffering in Lunathian. So we got another riddle here. He takes the computer to Declan, and Declan, our freaking computer hacker extraordinaire, he uses a program that he made to discover that the emails were sent by who? Danica. Because Danica may have been dead for a couple years at this point, but this girl is
She
still
shows up.
around. Okay. She is still
She
around. She is still making moves. She is still doing and has done things that are affecting everybody. So this girl just doesn't quit. So, shocker, these emails are from Danica. That's where the whole Banshee fans thing comes in, because apparently Danica was like a well known, huge Banshee fan. And so, yeah, While he's investigating this and he's pulling this up, he gets a call that they actually found a boat. And when he goes to investigate it, he finds a life vest with the name of the boat that Emil was on. So remember, we know that Emil got away at the end of the prologue, and this life vest on this boat that they found in this marsh, kind of like off by Crescent City, has the name of this boat on it. And then if they look, or as they look, Therian notices that there's tracks leading from the boat back into the city. So at this point, he's looking for Sophie and Emil, and he's like, okay, so they were here, and obviously they went into Crescent City. So now he's kind of trying to find them, and he's like, okay, where is this place where the weary souls find relief or whatever? So he goes to Bryce, to her apartment, to ask them for help. Bryce tells him that she doesn't know anything about the emails or Danica's involvement. Just poor Bryce, she doesn't know anything. Danica kept so many secrets from her, but Bryce does want to help, but she's cautious about turning him into any of the groups that Therian mentioned are looking for him. She knows that Pippa's looking for him, that the River Queen's looking for him, that the Hind and the Asteria are looking for him. And she's like, I want to help you find him, but I'm not turning him into any of these people. Like, they all want him for terrible reasons, and I'm not with that. But she does agree to help. And then Hunt at this point is kind of worried about joining a plot because, Hunt has been a rebel many times in his life, and he does not want to get caught up in this shit again. He's like, I'm finally like with the girl of my dreams. I'm finally living my best life. I'm free. Like, I do not want to get caught up in this shit. And he's worried about Bryce's safety. He's like, he knows what these people, the Hind specifically, and her whole thing, like, he knows what they're going to do to them if they find out that they're helping these rebels. So he's really worried about that. But he is a good boyfriend and he wants to support Bryce, so he agrees to help as well. Bryce reaches out to Fury and sends her all the intel that's been gathered so far. And then while meeting with Fury, she asks Bryce, is she aware that Danica was this thing called a bloodhound? So a bloodhound is a person with the ability to scent out your ancestries or your powers if they can scent your blood. This is a dangerous trait to have because it is either sought after or it's feared. Like, there's no in between. Like, people either want to get you so they can use your power to like against other people, or they want to take you out because they're afraid that you could expose them or tell their secrets or anything like that. We cut back to Hunt, who is at work training when Baxian approaches him and tries to explain that he was not happy working for Sandriel and that he was just doing what he had to. And he tells Hunt that they will be spending time together because Celestina decided to make them partners. So she partnered up Hunt with Baxian, and she partnered up Naomi with Pollux, and then Isaiah is still kind of in charge of everybody. Hunt and Naomi are now expected to show them the ropes of the city, and the city, because remember, like I said, they were from this territory before that was kind of like more old school, that did everything old school, and they're not used to like this modern technology and stuff. So now they're kind of in charge of showing them how things work in Crescent City. While this is happening, Therian and Ethan are hanging out at Bryce's apartment. Therian is trying to get information from him while they're hanging. They're kind of like forming a little bromance, but Therian is also using him. And Ethan tells him that while they were in college, Danica was a history major and that she was working on a few projects that seemed pretty important, but that all of a sudden she just stopped working on and dropped them. So this is kind of like an open-ended question. He's like, I don't know anything more than that, but this is what I have to offer you. Bryce and Rune walk in while this is happening, and immediately they're kind of like on edge. Like, Bryce goes on edge, and then Rune like reacts and is like, he doesn't see a threat, but he can just tell that something's off. And so they immediately are kind of like, okay, what the hell is going on? And it turns out that this cat that's in Ethan's lap that he's been petting is actually Adis, the Prince of the Chasm. After we find out that this cat is actually Adis, he drops a lot of information in this part that is important. So he asked Bryce why she hasn't started training for her powers yet. And Bryce is like, I've been training, like, I blah, 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 blah. And he's like, no, like, I need you to get serious. And he explains to them that the light that both Rune and Bryce possess, that while they are both starborn light, they're different. That Rune's power comes from Prince Peleus and is the same type of star power that he had, and that Bryce's power is the same as Queen Thea's was. So Aiden says he was actually there at the time of Queen Thea and Prince Peleus. He says that Queen Thea had a daughter named Princess Helena. She married Peleus, making him a prince. Peleus was originally a high-ranking military official. So that was like kind of how he got involved with her in the first place. And he says that contrary to the history books, the truth is that Peleus actually forced Helena to marry him so he could become a prince. And when he became the prince, he actually plotted to murder Queen Thea so that he could become the king. Adis tried to help, but he was outnumbered and he was too late. And because of this, Adis made the call to Apollyon, his older brother. I don't know how the whole Princes of Hell thing works. I look at them as brothers. So he made the call to
Same.
Apollyon, and Apollyon showed up to help. And that's where we had the whole showdown between Apollyon and Peleus, where he, killed Peleus, and then Peleus used the horn to seal them all and shut them back into hell. After he tells them this, he questions when Bryce is going to get serious and help in this war. And then Ethan is like, isn't hell our enemies? Like, they're evil. And he goes, who told you that? Who wrote the histories? And Therian chimes in and he's like, the Asteri.
What? Sorry.
And, no, you're good. He's like, the Asteri. And then he's like, the Asteri lied to your ancestors, made the scholars record the lies by threatening them, and then they erased Thea from the records. So basically, she's there, but they don't tell the truth about who she really was and what she could really do and what her true story was. The only place that this information still exists is the Library of Porthos. Remember, that was the library that was beneath Jezebel's gallery that has now been moved somewhere else and is being kept safe, because this is the last place where the true histories are. So it's very vital that they don't get found by the Asteri, because the Asteri are doing everything in their power to get rid of that. What was the world before the Asteri? It was basically it was the ancient gods and humans, and they lived in this world together. And whatever was left of that civilization still exists beneath the sea. I don't know. I feel like that's pretty important.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I gotta write something down.
Ooh,
I gotta
just
write something
saying.
down. One
Yeah,
sec.
because when I read
Continue.
when I reread that, I was like,
Huh?
this is pretty important. There was a lot of highlighting going on at this part.
Yeah, one sec.
Oh, go for it.
Write this down.
Yeah,
All
because
right.
I had a lot of thoughts when I read that too. I was like, oh, this Adis was dropping bombs at this part.
Yes.
But also, there's another bomb that comes up later that is going to make this even crazier. Anyways.
There's a lot of fucking bombs in this fucking book.
Yeah, there's a bomb in part 3 that makes this bomb even like crazier. Anyway, so no true answers are given by Adis at this point, but he also tells Bryce that she needs to hone her powers, and then telling her that she needs to watch where she's talking in public, because when she was meeting with Fury at the coffee shop this morning, there was a bunch of cats in the alley, and guess who one of those cats was? It was Adis, and he was listening to everything her and Fury were talking about. So he tells her, you need to like watch what you're saying and pay attention. And Bryce says, I don't know any rebels. I don't need to be worried about this. And Adis goes, yeah, you do. There's one standing right behind you. And as she turns around, who does she see in the doorway? Cormac. And Adis simply goes, hi, Agent Silverbow, and then
What?
leaves and vanishes into thin air.
Agent Silverbow from the prologue?
Literally, like, so many things are coming together, you guys.
The one that's in love with Sophie. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I love these books, because like these books specifically are just like mystery, dude. Like, it's like the whole time you're
Yeah.
reading it, you're just like, things are
Yes.
unraveling, you're finding out secrets, everything's tied together, it all matters. That's why I love Crescent
I
City so
love it
much.
too.
Yeah, it's like of all the series, like it has romance and obviously like some of my favorite characters, Bryce and Hunt obsessed. But yeah, it's just so interesting how she like slowly starts to bring all of these things together.
Mhm.
So he outs Cormac. Here we go. Okay. Cormac confirms that he's working for the rebels and that he was very close to Sophie. He is trying to figure out, he's trying to find he's trying to find out where Emil is before Pippa finds out because he knows that Pippa's kind of crazy and that he doesn't feel like Emil will be safe with her. So he wants to find Emil before Pippa gets the chance to. We find out that Emil actually ran away from Pippa because he saw her do some crazy shit and kill a bunch of people. And he reveals that his last promise to Sophie was to save Emil. This is why he actually agreed to the engagement with Bryce, because he was like, I need an excuse to be in Crescent City without looking like I'm searching for this kid. And so that's why he agreed to marry Bryce, not because he's interested in Bryce at all. He's in love with Sophie. He is just doing this for that. He also informs them that Sophie knew something big, and that's why she was killed by the Hind. She was going to tell Danica what she knew, but Danica was killed before she could. And then Tharian reveals to Cormac that he found where her body was, but that her actual body wasn't there. So there's a possibility that she's actually not dead, that she's still alive. He asked Rune if he's willing to help him because he needs his mind speaking abilities. Can't really remember if we touched on this in the first book, but Rune does have the power to mind speak. I think we did, but just to be sure. And then Bryce agrees to help keep up the charade of the engagement if Cormac agrees to some stipulations. She tells him that he's going to train her in this starborn magic so she can help with this, war, like Adis was saying. She says they're all going to work on finding Emil and that the engagement ends when she says it ends. So she gets the ability, the right to call off the engagement whenever she wants. Mac agrees, and then Bryce leaves for work and Hunt follows her out. She tells him at this point that she no longer wants to wait until the winter solstice to get sexy with him. And then they end up making out in the alley. But Hunt's like, slow down. We can't do this. Like, what if we get caught? Like, we can't get caught out here. Everyone will know that your engagement with Cormac is a sham. So they cut it short, and then Hunt heads out and Bryce goes to work. Back at the apartment, Tharian decides just to fill Ethan in because he feels like, rightfully so, he feels like at this point, Ethan is the only one who doesn't really know what's going on as far as what happened last spring. He's the only one who wasn't at the summit, so he didn't see. So he goes into detail and tells Ethan basically that Micah is the one who killed Danica. And because of that, Bryce killed Micah. And then when Bryce killed Micah, Sandriel was calling the Asteri, so then Hunt killed Sandriel. Basically, sum up the plot of the end of the last book. That's what happened. Ethan needs to blow off some steam after he hears this. He actually kind of blames himself a little bit for how he treated Bryce because he's like, wow, she really did care about Danica and Connor in the pack. Like, she wasn't as unaffected as she thought. Like, she truly avenged them. And like, he feels bad for how he treated her. So he's trying to blow off some steam, but he can't leave the apartment because if you remember, he's kind of a wanted person by the pack right now. So he goes into Bryce's room and he sees Danica's sword. And to blow off some steam, he's kind of like playing warrior in the apartment. He's like jumping around and like, oh, I feign left, I feign right. And as he ends up like jumping on top of the coffee table to be like, oh, I'm about to attack, Bryce walks in the apartment. They might make eye contact with each other. And then the coffee table just like goes like breaks in half underneath him, like from his weight. So at first he sees Bryce looking and he's thinking that she's going to be fucking pissed off that he broke her coffee table. Because remember, Bryce is a fancy girl and she likes all of her things very, very much. But it turns out Bryce is actually not even looking at that. She's kind of looking at this piece of paper that's sticking out of the coffee table. And she goes and picks it up and immediately a piece of paper falls out and it's paperwork that was all of the projects that Danica was working on in college. Remember when Ethan said earlier that she was working on some projects that she kind of dropped? All of that paperwork is in the coffee table, and it mentions things like Dust Truth, the First Light, and different weapons that the Asteri have. So now Cormac and Rune meet at this bar, and Cormac asks Rune to help him connect with a contact who was giving him information on the rebels and different humans. Like he was giving them information that helped them save children and different people that were in the camps and the death camps where Emil was. Her information is vital and it helped them save many lives. And so he's looking to Rune to use his mind speaking ability to help get back in contact with her so they can get more information and save more lives, basically. Rune is hesitant at first, but eventually he does agree to do it. And he finds out that he's going to be speaking with somebody named Agent Daybreak. We finally cut back to Bryce and Hunt, and we're getting some sexy time in with them. But before things can get too sexy, Ethan kind of reminds them that he's still there and that he can hear everything that's going on. And so they end up stopping, and they, we'll get there eventually. But for now, they kind of cut it short because of that. That night, after they hooked up, they go to sleep, and Hunt is awakened from his sleep by Apollyon, the Prince of the Pit. Apollyon wants to know why he hasn't been training to use his powers, and he tells Hunt he can do much more than use lightning. Because Hunt's kind of like, I have been training. Like, I know how to use my lightning. I use it all the time. And he's like, no, kid, you can do so much more. And then he specifically says that him and Bryce can do more than they're accepting that they can do right now, and that together they would be extremely powerful. He says both you and Bryce are conduits, and you have no idea how valuable you and the others like you are. So that's where we find out that maybe there's some more to both of them than what we've been exposed to so far. We don't get much more information than that, but it's definitely something to keep in the back of your mind. Rune then meets up with Declan and Emmett so they can watch him while he uses this calm crystal to talk to Agent Daybreak for the first time, just in case it's a setup or anything like that. Because remember, at this point, they're still kind of questioning if they can trust Cormac at all. They watch him while he does that. This is not important at all, but I think it's Flynn is like high as hell. And he's just kind of like, he's like, it's irresponsible. Like, he's like, how are you even going to help me if something goes wrong? Like, you're high on mirth root over there. And he's just kind of like, whatever, I've been irresponsible my whole life. But it doesn't matter because nothing bad happens. And he does get in contact with Agent Daybright, and she kind of is like making fun of him for being completely unprepared. He doesn't know to hide his face, but he gets lucky, and it's just naturally kind of hidden in this starlight kind of thing that represents his magic, I guess. So he's got like the stars and is black as night. And then she appears as like this fire kind of situation. And that's why she's Day. And she asked him, what should I call you? And he's like, I guess I can't tell you to call me Rune. She's like, okay, whatever. I'm going to call you Night, and we'll just be day and night. And that'll keep things simple. And the first meeting does go well, but they like, there is some teasing for like just how unprepared and how bad he is at this. At this point, we cut back to Celestina, and she calls a meeting for all of the angels, and they are there. Well, first off, they go to her house to have a meeting, which is kind of unusual and not very common for the archangels. So they're in her house, and they find out that they're there because Baxian and Pollux have gotten into a fight. Baxian's face is all like his eyes all swollen or whatever, and Pollux's face just looks insane. And this is back to why we think Pollux is just a complete piece of shit. We
Yep.
find out that Baxian was actually defending a woman that Pollux had come onto at the bar from Pollux. He was flirting with this girl all night, and then they went out into an alley, and Baxian knows what kind of dude Pollux is, so he was like watching them closely. And when they got out into the alley, the girl was apparently saying no, and Pollux was continuing to pursue her anyways. And so Baxian attacked him and beat the shit out of him.
As you should.
Yeah, as you should. And so now we're starting to kind of question, like, is Baxian like not as much of an asshole as we thought he was? Like, is he different than the other people that, the way we've been introduced to him? Who knows? But whatever. So Celestina then reveals at this point that instead of them being punished, she's the one who's going to be punished. And that the Asteri have basically told her that she is going to be married or mated to Ephraim to take attention away from this brawl. Seems kind of sketchy to me. Like this little fight was not going to be that big of a deal. And now you guys have to get married. But not only do they have to get married, but they're also expected to have a child. Like, because apparently, like, archangels are not born very often. So they're expecting this union to make a child. And she tells them that the mating ceremony will be held on the autumnal equinox. And that this means that when Ephraim comes, he's going to be bringing the hind and the harpy with him. So Pollux is excited about this because he's like, oh, my girl's coming to town. Your girl, who you were just cheating on 2 seconds ago with this girl in the alley that didn't even want you, but whatever. And then, like, literally, this guy
No, fuck
sucks.
him. He
No, he
sucks.
sucks. But then, so everyone else is kind of like, fuck, dude, the hind and the harpy are going to be in the city. Like, it's not good. So he's the only one who's excited about it. At this point, Celestina sends everyone out of the office but Hunt, and she keeps Hunt behind and she tells him that she's sorry that she wasn't able to save him while he was enslaved to Sandriel, and reveals that she was actually close friends with Shahar. And that when she found out that Hunt was being held by Sandriel, she did feel guilty about the fact that she wasn't there to help them that day, and that she didn't do anything more to help and aid in their rebellion. And so she tried to buy Hunt from Sandriel 3 times, but the Asteri wouldn't let her. And she was like, if I kept trying after that, it would have looked suspicious. So I couldn't do it. And then she tells him that she was actually happy that Hunt killed Sandriel and did it in the way that she did, because, she was like, I just felt like that was the revenge, not even revenge, but just like the justice I needed for what happened to Shahar. And then we get one of my favorite lines in the book because I just love Hunt so much. And then he goes, I literally teared up when I was rereading this, but he just goes, it's okay. Like, don't feel bad about it, because basically, if I hadn't gone through what I did and I hadn't experienced that, then I never would have met Bryce. And I'm just like literally tearing up, and I just love fictional men so much. But anyways, then we're back to a different point of view again. We jump over to Therian, and we find out that he has taken Ethan with him on an investigation. Therian is using Ethan at this point for his great sense of smell, because remember, all wolves have like great noses. They can't all do the bloodhound thing, but they're all really good at scenting. And Ethan tells him, I'm sorry, they found a dead Selkie in the swamp, and Ethan's like, oh, it smells like 2 humans were on here. So Therian and him kind of deduce that the Selkie helped Emil escape, and then Pippa found the Selkie and tortured her for information. Bryce and Rune are walking out. So this is all happening at the same time, but we're on a different place now. And we get Bryce and Rune are hanging out with each other. And they're kind of walking and bonding because, they're getting closer now. And Bryce shares that her and her mom are not really talking right now because Ember is upset with her that she didn't tell her about Cormac, that she was engaged. And Ember and Randall really like Hunt, and they want Bryce to be with Hunt. And so she was kind of pissed about that. So they're not really on speaking terms. And as they're talking, I guess they reveal that, or I guess Bryce talks to Rune about how whenever her and her mom are not talking in person, they send each other these postcards. I'm only saying that because it matters later. And it's kind of unique, but when they can't talk to each other, they just write everything down and they like slide postcards under the door. And now that they're further apart, they mail them to each other. And as she's talking to him about this, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a Reaper comes up and grabs Rune and drags him into the sewer and is like down there holding him under the water. And of course, Bryce jumps down there to save him. And as they have him down there, she sees not just the one Reaper who grabs him, but there's 5 Reapers down there. They're holding Rune under the water. And they're like, we are using him as collateral to talk to you. And so 2 things are happening at the same time. Oh, at one point, Rune is all of a sudden like having a conversation with Agent Debray. She can sense that he's in danger, and she's like, "You need to wake up! Like, you need to wake up! Like, you're gonna be killed! Like, you need to wake up right now!" And he's like, "How are you here right now? Like, I'm not using the comm crystal. Like, what's going on?" And she's like, "Dude, focus! You need to wake the fuck up! You're dying!" And while that's happening, Bryce is talking to the Reapers, and they tell her that they were sent by Apollyon And again, they're like, you need to train harder. Like, we're ready to get this war going. And if you don't like get your shit together, like, not even if you don't, like, we need you to get your shit together. Like, we will like kill your brother. Like, we're sending a message. Like, you need to get together, you need to train. And then she starts trying to fight the Reapers off using the day sword that she gets off of Rune, and she realizes that she can actually kill one of the Reapers, which is kind of a big deal because Reapers are already dead. So the whole thing is you can't kill what's already dead, but using her power combined with the Star Sword, she is able to kill one. Also, at this point, we find out another pretty big secret because who shows up to save the day? Cormac. And he doesn't just show up, he literally teleports in. Cormac can teleport? Okay, cool. And that's the end of part one.
All right, guys, we took a little short break and I'm back and I have my blanket. So if it looks different, it's because shit's
Yay.
getting real. All right. So, whew, I will say this book only has 3 parts, but it feels like it has like 15. So, yep.
Yep.
This outline took us so long. It's like 20 pages, but it's fine.
We're gonna get there, guys. We're gonna get there.
All right, so part 2 is called The Abyss. So this part starts with a POV of Therian, and the River Queen summons him because in part 1, he goes, I can't remember if he went to Hunt or Bryce about having a double date or something with the River Queen's daughter.
Oh, yeah.
And he then asks the River Queen's daughter, who like kind of comes on to him, if she would want to do that because he's trying to get her to kind of go away. And she was like, "Oh, I'll have to ask my mother because for some reason the River Queen feels the need to shelter this girl so much."
This
And
poor girl.
yeah, so she summons him because she's literally upset that he asked her to go to the surface world, and she's concerned about how people in Crescent City treat MERS, and she makes him basically go and pick up the trash by
I
the
just,
surface. And people, I mean, people are really bad to MERS, I will say. And people throw trash at him as his punishment for asking her daughter out on a date, even though she literally told him that he has to marry her because I guess he took her virginity. The River Queen is kind of sus.
yeah, no, literally. I got questions about her.
Me too. Also, why don't we know her name?
Yeah. Well, I don't think we know any of the river ocean
We don't.
people, but yeah,
I don't know. She's on my suspect list.
literally.
So we get back to a POV of Rune, and he's super shook about the Reaper attack, and he goes to his dad, the Autumn King, to kind of find out more about the Star Sword and why was it able to kill a Reaper, which is something that's not supposed to be able to be fucking killed. And his dad explains that the sword is from another world and it's made from the metal of a fallen star. And yeah, again, a metal from a fallen star.
Okay. My
Weird.
attention.
That's crazy. But so Rune doesn't tell him that Bryce was the one who was wielding the Star Sword when the Reaper died, but the Autumn King basically kind of guessed it. So again, this book bounces POVs. So I'm trying my best to keep this somewhat organized. Anyway, so we're back to Bryce and Hunt, and they go to the Black Docks, and Cormac is there still looking for clues about Emil and Sophie and where the hell they can be. Cormac tells Bryce that he will teach her how to teleport, which might also be called something else in a different series.
Just saying.
Just
We did say there would be maybe some spoilers for this, so yeah, I'm just saying there's definitely likening to winnowing, if you know.
yeah. I mean, I hope you know, but
Literally, we did warn you.
so Cormac basically tells her that he's going to teach her how to do that. And they go back to Bryce's apartment with Hunt, Declan, and Rune. And Declan is there searching the security cameras for the Reaper that literally kidnapped fucking Rune. But he's also looking at footage from Danica from a few years ago. Bryce gets kind of upset with seeing Danica, so she's all, oh, I'm gonna go to the gym real quick. And Hunt is like, oh, what should I do? Because there's like this like sunball game on, okay, during this. And so he's like, no, I don't need to watch the game. I'm gonna go hang out with my girl and go to the gym with her. So he leaves. And then we kind of find out a little bit more about Ethan and how he was saying, I don't know, we kind of find out a little bit that he might have feelings for Bryce, which
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, so
Not even
him,
might.
I mean, he does, but
He was in love with Bryce.
so him and his brother, Connor, were both like in love with Bryce. Like everyone loves Bryce. Okay. She is the shit. Okay.
Yeah, literally, I love Bryce too.
So instead of actually going to the gym, Bryce is outside their apartment waiting for Hunt because she knows he's going to follow, as he
Uh,
should. But so he's
Ugh.
dressed in his gym clothes and he walks out. He's just like, what's happening? I thought we are going to the gym. And she was like, no, we're going to the fucking meat market. So he's just, what the fuck? So they end up going to the meat market where Fury and Juniper show up to help them search for a meal because she's, well, where do the weary souls go? It could also be the meat market. So
Mhm.
they decide to search the meat market. And during the search, we learn a little bit about Juniper. And she's really uncomfortable being there. She hates the Viper Queen. And we learned that her brother, Julius, was actually a fighter for the Viper Queen because she kind of tricked him into a contract. He got addicted to her venom. And she has a fighting ring, and he was in it, and he ended up dying. And she decided that it'd be a great idea to dump his body on Juniper's family's doorstep. So
Mm-mm-mm.
that's kind
Viper
of,
Queen's
I
kind
don't
of
know.
Viper Queen's kind of sketch too, man. Everybody's sketching this in
Yep,
this series.
I don't know who to trust at all.
Yeah.
So after this happens, Bryce and Hunt actually do go to the gym. This is our first spicy, a little bit more of a spicy scene of the book that escalates past hissing. Yeah, he goes down on her. He goes down on her
He's
during this
reciprocating because
scene.
remember when they hooked up earlier,
That is
yeah.
true. Okay, yeah, you're right. It's not the first spicy scene. It's another spicy scene.
It's
Okay.
but they still haven't
They
gone all
still
the
haven't done
way.
the official deed, but they're making
Right.
their way. So also while he's, doing his work on her, she says, "I love you."
Aw.
And after, you know, stuff happens, he says that he loves her back. Super cute. A little
Mm.
cute little moment in the Horde of Chaos.
Even though
So,
I'm not always an advocate for that being the first time you drop I love you bombs, but
oh, yep. So they go back to Bryce's apartment and they start having a discussion on mates. This part's really interesting because they just decide to call each other mates. There's not really a snapping in place kind of thing that happens in this chapter that we might be used to in other SJM books. And Hunt does kind of question if different species can even be mates. And Bryce also kind of explains a little bit about how some mates are biological and predestined. And they're not really sure what they are, but they know that they feel like they're more than boyfriend and girlfriend. So they
Mhm.
decide to call each other mates. Yeah, so back to Rune. He meets with Day again in the Mind Bridge, and she has a little bit of information to pass on to him. There is going to be a shipment leaving in 3 days that has something called mech suits on it and brimstone missiles. I'm not exactly sure if we learned too much about the mech suits in this part, but we'll learn a little bit about them later. But
Mhm.
they are really powerful, and also Hunt has a background in working with suits and technology, so that's important to note.
Yeah, his
So
power specifically makes him have an affinity for
mhm.
technology. So, and
So
Sandria did use him for
that
that,
is
like in
true.
the past, and she used to make him do messed up things to kill people based on this.
So after this meeting, Rune and Cormac and Ethan decide to go pass on the information to Orphean. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Ophian, I don't know.
Orphean. I don't know. Okay. So back to Bryce and Hunt. They are okay. What else should we do? We need to find where Emil is. So she's like, okay, the only way we get into the bone quarter is if we have death marks. So she calls up Jessica because she has all the connections. She gets death marks from Jessica that come the next day, and they get on a little boat to make their way through the Istros River to the bone quarter. And randomly, Baxian is there. He's just there.
What the hell are you doing there?
I don't know. He just keeps showing up. Really random.
Why are you popping up, bro?
And he asks Bryce, oh, why are you going to the bone quarter? Who are you going to go see? Are you going to go see Danica? And, and Bryce, they kind of brush it off a little bit. Anyway, it was kind of a really random scene, but it builds up a little bit later.
It matters.
It does matter. So they meet with the Underking after they drop their death marks in, and they get to the bone quarter, and they kind of question him a little bit because they're just, who sent the Reapers? Was it you? And he said that he didn't. And they also asked him, like, is Emil hanging out here? And he says, no, there's no humans here. And she also asked him, oh, is there someone named Lahaba here? And he says he doesn't know of anyone by that name that's there, which, yeah, that's kind of sad. But
Very sad.
so we also learned during this time that when people go to the bone quarter, they stay there for a long time, and then they're sent through the dead gate where they become second light. Okay, so remember, second light comes from when someone dies. And we also learned something really big about the bone quarter, and it's not really this amazing place that you die and it's meadows and amazing. It's kind of a shitty ass place.
Yeah. They've been bamboozled. They've been lied to.
And the Underking is like, that lies just for comfort. That's what it is. Yep. And then the book's like, let's go back to Rune. So Rune,
the way this book jumps around, I'm sorry.
I know. I feel like this is probably going to be the future of Sarah J. Maas books.
Yeah.
I don't hate it, but it is kind of difficult to keep along with sometimes.
Yeah.
So we go back to Rune's POV, and Cormac is talking to his contacts, and we learn that the Dreadwolves are in the city. Remember, the Dreadwolves are the ones that killed Emil and Sophie's parents, and they're kind of the hands of the Hind. But one of the Dreadwolves, who is second in command to the Hind, his name is Mordock, and we learn that he is Danica's father. Gasp. During this, we also learned that Mordock is a bloodhound, and just like Danica was, and Danica fucking hated him.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to see him. And he also, so during this, Rune is he's using his shadows to shield himself, but Mordock smells him, which isn't good. And he can't find him, but he says he's going to remember his scent. Woo!
Not good.
That's kind of stressful.
That's bad.
So they're all freaking out. They're like, oh, fuck, we got to come up with something to make sure people know what we were doing something during this time in case this comes back to us. So they end up going to a bar and exchanging some text messages hey, meet me at this bar at this time. So it looks like it was planned. And during this time, Rune asks Ethan if he wants to move in with him, which is so cute. I love that.
I love their little bromance they got.
Me too. But then the Harpy and the Hind walk the fuck in.
Boo.
But we're back in the bone quarter.
Oh, I forgot about that. Okay.
So back to the bone quarter. Hunt realizes that the Underking is not going to let them leave the bone quarter alive. The Underking calls on this giant ass fucking dog who is blind, which isn't good for Bryce because she can't use her light to blind him. We learn that the dog is a demon. It was an experiment of one of the Princes of Hells during the First War. The dog ends up growing 3 heads. It's kind of giving like Harry Potter
I
a
was
little
just about to
bit.
say, is this Harry Potter?
But
Flippy.
when it splits into 3 heads, it also splits into 3 different fucking dogs. Okay. What? It's getting crazy. Okay. So they're like, oh shit, we gotta fuck this shit up. So Hunt tries to use his lightning. It doesn't do anything. And Bryce is trying to escape. She's running back to the river, the Istros River, trying to escape. But then she's like, fuck. Hunt is getting screwed. So she's like, I gotta go help my man. So she runs back to him and she hits the dead gate and she drops the star sword.
Mhm.
And Hunt is fighting 2 of the dogs. The third one hears Bryce and he goes running after her. And then she is circled by the dog and 2 dozen Reapers. Okay, this isn't a good situation. This shit
Mm.
sucks. And the Reapers are starting to chant at the fucking dead gate and it's like glowing with light. Okay.
What's going on?
Yeah, it's like a horror movie. What's happening? Hunt is like, oh my God, I gotta go save Bryce. So he runs over to Bryce and he's still getting chased and attacked by the 2 other dogs. So, yes, he goes over to Bryce, but now he's covered in lightning that is blue. So his powers are kind of a little bit escalating. He puts his power onto the dog, and Bryce has. So she picks back up the Star Sword, okay? And she has his lightning hit the Star Sword. And while this happens, the Star Sword absorbs his power and it flows into her. His lightning is now part of her power. Hell yeah, she's charged up. So she
No, literally.
so and again, it was Apollyon that told Hunt, y'all need to really explore your power together. This is what he meant.
Pay
Okay.
attention.
So she kills one of the dogs with Hunt's lightning. And it kind of shows us that she's now kind of like a beacon that she can absorb his power and vice versa. So Hunt remembers what Apollyon said. He puts his hand on the dead gate, which I said is glowing with fucking light because the Reapers are being weird and chanting. And the light
Mhm.
begins to flow into him. So he sends Bryce some more power to the Star Sword. They kill the dogs. And so they're trying to escape. They're like, we get the fuck out of here. So they're running back to the Istros River. And who comes? Therian. Therian shows up and he's just like, I got you. I saw your lightning in the distance. I am going to help you. And so he helps them get back to Crescent City and back to Bryce's apartment. And they're like, what the fuck? And also during this, some reason POV changes again to Therian. And this is
Oh,
earlier. It's
okay.
yeah, a little bit earlier. Sorry.
No,
I was trying to put all of the fight of the bone quarter
right,
together because
all
I feel
together.
like it's a lot. But a little bit earlier before the bone quarter, Therian talks to the River Queen again, and she says that 2 more Vanir bodies were found, but they were killed in the way that the Lightfall squad kills people, which means Pippa might be under the murders that are happening. So they're a little bit sus of Pippa. So they're kind of like, they're like, yeah, we can't trust her. What's happening? And Therian asked the River Queen if she would give him a squad to help go after Pippa. And she says no, which I'm like, but you told him that he needs to find Sophie, but you're not gonna help. I don't know. It's
Once again, sus.
I don't know. I don't know. So yeah. So then we're
Yeah.
back to Rune.
Rune Dannon.
So remember, they're at the bar, okay? Him, Cormac, Ethan are at this bar, and the Hind and the Harpy walk in. The Hind goes up to them and like literally like scares them a little bit because she knows a lot about them. And she's just like, I know y'all come here on Tuesdays to play poker. I know Ethan likes Bryce. I know that Rune hooked up with this shifter during the party and part 1. She knows shit. And it kind of like riles them up a bit. And they're like, we gotta go. We gotta leave. So they go back to the apartment where now Bryce and Hunt are, and they kind of talk. But more stuff is happening, okay? Hunt
Mm-mm-mm.
gets a call from Celestina, and she's like, Ephraim, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, has just arrived and she wants him there. So,
I
so
know the feeling.
oh my God. So Hunt goes to Celestina and he's there when Celestina and Ephraim meet. And I think they knew each other from the past, but it's kind of awkward because now she's being forced to marry him because the
Yeah.
Asteri's like, you gotta marry him.
Yeah.
He notes that it's very awkward and wonders if Celestina is even into men. Huh? What? Okay. So while Hunt has to leave the apartment and deal with that, Bryce is filling in Rune and Ethan and whatever about the bone quarter and how it's kind of like a sham. It's not a good place to go when he died. It sucks.
Right.
But you know who shows up? Sabine. She knocks on, like, why is so much happening?
First of all, I'm
Sabine,
sorry, I hate her.
me too. She knocks on Bryce's door. She's pissed that Bryce has been giving Ethan a place to live. And she calls her some mean names.
Mm-mm. Always got something to say to her.
And so Bryce is like, what the fuck? So she texts Hunt and his bitch ass Sabine is here. So he is like, I gotta go to my girl again. So he sneaks out of the meeting with Celestina and dips. But she
Oops.
notices.
Oh, come on, Hunt.
He notices. So Ethan is super upset at Sabine, as he should, and asks her about Mordock. And he basically was like, oh, do you know Mordock's in town? Are you gonna sleep with him again? Like trying to jab at her. And this is how Bryce finds out that Mordock is Danica's fucking dad.
Poor Bryce. I'm sorry.
Dude,
Poor
I
Bryce.
know this poor
He's finding out
girl.
all this crazy shit.
Oh my God, I can't. Okay, so Bryce then questions Sabine about Danica being a possible rebel. And then Hunt shows up. And you know who else shows up again? By accident. He's just there. He's just there behind him.
Not
He's just
by
like, hey,
accident.
bitch. Like, so he's there.
Oh my
And they
God.
basically are like, get the fuck out, Sabine. What the fuck are you doing? And she's just like, oh, so she leaves. She leaves. Bye. Bye. She's gone.
Yeah. Thank God.
And for some reason, by accident knows that Mordock was Danica's dad. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that?
Hmm.
So, oh my gosh.
So much is going on.
So we're back to Rune again, his own POV. And he meets with Day again. And he tells her about how the hinds and the harpy kind of intercepted him at a bar. And she kind of just says a few things about how Mordock is supposed to be really sweet for the people that she works with. He has a good reputation for some reason for the people she works for, which the only thing we kind of know about Day is that people think that she might be an Asteri, but I don't know. We're not really sure who she is at this point, but we know that she is kind of like double agent in some sort.
Mm-hmm.
So after Sabine comes to Bryce's apartment, Ethan is still he's upset. Like, why are you here? Literally go the fuck away. But
Anywhere but here.
anywhere, please. All he wants to do is to go see Connor. He misses his brother. And so he is like, I want to go see if he's at the bone quarter. I really want to talk to him. I have some questions for him. And so he asks Therian for help, and he says no about going to the bone quarter. But Ethan then says, okay, then let's go to the mystics so they can ask about Emil and Connor. So during this, we also learn that Juniper ends up not getting chosen to be principal dancer of the ballet, which is really heartbreaking for her because she's literally the best dancer of Crescent City. And this is a known fact. I don't understand. And Bryce is pretty upset. She tries to do some stuff for Juniper. Anyway, so also during this is probably the next day, Hunt gets a call from Celestina. And She is upset that he left the meeting event because Ephraim saw it, which isn't great because he kind of
Mm-mm.
questions Celestina. Oh, why isn't your priority here? Why are they sneaking out? Because it wasn't, again, it wasn't also just Hunt that left, also by accident left.
Mm-hmm.
So she gives him a punishment of having to stay at the barracks for 2 weeks, which isn't great for
Mm.
Hunt and Bryce.
Just when
So
things are getting hot.
I know, right? It's just, I mean, I love the slow burn. I'm not upset
No,
about it.
honestly,
But
me too. Me too. Like,
when I was reading this book, I was like, when is it? When is it gonna happen? Is it gonna happen?
oh, it happens.
It happens. But so Bryce, Theory, and Ethan had to go see the Mystics, and we meet a new character called the Astronomer. Wow, this man has a lot of mystery. So we also learn that he has 4 rings of fire sprites that are enslaved to him, but he also has 3 mystics that are submerged in this weird ass water. And again, one is male, one is female, and one is non binary, which,
Hmm.
as you remember from the background information, that's the only time that mystics really have all of their power. So he asked him, Ethan asked the astronomer about Connor, like, where is he? Oh my gosh. And the astronomer searches for him using like a replica of their solar system and kind of like a hologram and also blood salt. He says he's in hell, but then he talks to someone and we learn another name of a prince of hell, and this is the prince of the ravine. His name is Thanatos, and he
Mm.
says that Connor is not in hell. So Thanatos wants to know who's asking about Connor, and the astronomer shows him that it's Bryson Hunt and Therian, and
Mhm.
Thanatos is like, who? And he can smell the starlight on Bryce. He also notices that she's the one that killed his pet and the bone quarter. So this fucking 3-headed dog was his dog. So
Oh.
he's pissed. And he tells him that Connor is in the bone quarter and that an order was placed that he should be left alone, but he won't say who gave the order.
Mm.
Thanatos wants to eat all the mystics and he tries to attack them and he freezes all of them that are submerged. So after this, Bryce is like, Therian, I don't want to work with you anymore. But then she forgives him within a chapter.
Yeah, literally. She's like, I never want to see you again.
Back on Hunt. Hunt and by accident bond a little bit because they're stuck in the barracks together right now for 2 weeks. And at this point, him and Bryce have phone sex. We get another POV of Therian, and he is kind of like, why didn't the River Queen tell me about the bone quarter? So he confronts her and asks if she knew the true state of it. And she doesn't really give him an answer. She
That's
gives
suspicious.
me some red flags. But so back with Bryce, she is training with Rune and Cormac to learn how to teleport. But they get a call from Declan during this saying that he found something from Danica's tape.
Mm.
So the footage shows her 2 months before she died, and she was in the library and she grabbed a book called Wolves Through Time: Lineage of the Shifters, and she took photos of it with her phone.
Hmm.
Why? We don't know. So again, Bryce calls up her girl Jessica. She's like, I need something again.
Every time Jezba's the answer.
No, seriously. And so she asked for this book, and Jessica is amazing and sends it to her. And she looks through the book, and it has a family tree of the shifters and goes all the way back to when the Northern Rift first opened. She learns a little bit about the lineage of Danica. The Prime's father, Gunthar Fenir, is the last name that was recorded into it. And the first people in the line of Danica's family is Nicholas and Fair Helvin.
Mm.
And they're kind of, okay, who's that? They're the first people apparently that are in this family line. She wants to know more. about them. So she's like, you know what? I'm gonna go talk to the Prime of Wolves, which is Danica's grandpa, aka Sabim's fucking dad. Whoa,
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna go well. So she goes to the wolf's den, and Rune during this calls Sabine and lures her out of it. So she doesn't know that Bryce is there, because if she knew that, she would literally fucking kill her. So she talks to the Prime of Wolves and asks him, well, who are these people? And he doesn't know anything about them. But he says that the other names are forgotten because they did really bad things during the First War, and then they started working for the Asteri. But he also calls her a wolf again. And this is the second time he has called her this. Don't know what it means, but interesting. Okay.
Mm.
So there's a heist situation going in where, again, Ophrian is trying to get the mech suits, and they are successful to it. And they're shipping it to this place called Cordonal Island. And again, everyone on Bryce's side is kind of sus about Pippa and Ophrian. Also, during this, randomly, Juniper finds out that Bryce. So what happened was that Bryce threatened the person who runs the ballet,
Mm-hmm.
and she says, if you don't make Juniper principal, I'm going to take the Autumn King's donation to the ballet away, which ends up making Juniper principal, but she's upset because everyone knows that this is the reason why she got it now.
Mm.
And she feels like she didn't really earn it. I
Which
don't
is not true.
I know she really did earn it, and she should have
Mhm.
gotten it in the first place, which is, I don't know
Bryce
why.
shouldn't have had to do that, but yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Bryce is just trying to be a good friend, and Juniper is
Yeah.
really upset with her, and she's still trying to kind of rekindle her friendship with Fury. So this isn't really great, but because, Fury and Juniper are together, which is cute. But so then during
We
this, Bryce says, okay, I need to go talk to Celestina because I need to get Hunt back, because we need to go figure out this mech suit situation. So she goes to Celestina, and she's like, can I have Hunt back for a night? Because we're going to go see my parents, which isn't true. But Celestina is really cool. And she's like, you know what? He can just go back home. Don't worry about it. He's off the hook, which is really nice of her.
Mhm.
So I forgot to mention, when Bryce was talking to the Prime of Wolves, she also did tell him what Sabine did to Ethan. So the Prime calls Ethan and wants to make him the alpha, and he recognizes that Ethan is an alpha and that he kind of suppresses it so that other people can shine around him. I don't know, that's
Mhm.
kind of cute, but
I like Ethan.
me too. So then during this, he also goes back to the astronomer, but he's not there. But the mystic female is, and she's not submerged in the water anymore. I also forgot to mention that Ethan, when the Prince of the Ravine froze the mystics, Ethan was really stressed about it, and he tried to save them, and he did. He saved them from the frozen water. So
Mhm.
he goes back there and sees that the female is still not in the water, but the astronomer is not there. So he's kind of talking to her, and she says that she has been put back into it because he's at the meat market to get some more parts, because I guess I don't know, the pod that he's keeping her in is damaged.
Yeah.
So during this, he realizes that she is a fucking wolf too. She's a wolf shifter. And yeah. And he also notices that she's probably an alpha wolf, which, whoa.
Mhm.
So she doesn't know too much about how she got there, only that she was there since she was 3 or 4 years old. During this, Ethan's like, you know what? I'm gonna steal this fucking ring box from this guy because he sucks. And remember,
Yeah.
the ring boxes, but it has
From early.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we're back with Rune, and Rune and Day are talking again on the low mind bridge, and she's kind of, I don't know, she's kind of like making some weird movements, and he's kind of like, what's happening? And then he realizes, oh my God, she's literally having sex right now in real life. And so she goes, but he's kind of what's happening because he was concerned about it because it was kind of alarming
Mhm.
sex. And so after this happens, she goes back to him, and he confronts her about it and was like, what was that? And he was, doesn't seem that was enjoyable. And she was like, yeah, I hate this guy and he sucks. And yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. This part, Okay, this whole fucking part, this part is when shit gets fucking real. So
Mhm.
so they're back trying to get to the mech suits. So there's Rude, Therian, Bryce, and Hunt are teleported by Cormac to the ship in the Cornell Islands, whatever, to try to stop Pippa from using the new suits because they realize, oh my God, she has these suits. We can't trust her. She's probably going to use them
Mhm.
to kill people. And that doesn't really make her good. She kind of realized, oh, she's kind of as bad as the other side where they're killing people as well.
Right.
Yeah, so basically Cormac tried to confront her a little bit while Bryce and Therian and Rune are kind of hiding. And he also brings Hunt along and is like, hey, like my friend knows a lot about suits. Let him look at it because he can help us out. So he realizes that they're made from Gorzian stones. And they also learn that they're made from the Asteri, and the suits take first light from the pipes that are in the city, which if you remember back from Crescent City 1, basically the first light kind of flows through the city through these underground pipes. And these suits literally take this power and it makes a huge armor for the person wearing it, and it can make weapons on the fucking spot. Invincible pretty much if you're wearing this shit. So
Mhm.
that's not good because they're like, no one should have these suits. Why was the Asteri making them? Why does Pippa
Mhm.
want them now? So then Pippa's still trying to find Emil, and she's like, you know what? We don't even need to find him anymore because we have these suits, which shows she literally was only trying to find him to use his Thunderbird power.
She's such a bitch.
Red flag. So shit starts to go down. And the Lightfall squad kills a bunch of Vanir. I don't really remember exactly how this part happened. I think they might have been on the ship that they're on, but this kind of triggers the whole fight sequence. And Hunt decides, no, fuck this. And he literally makes all of the suits and all of the Lightfall like trucks fucking explode. So there's no more suits. Bye. They don't exist anymore.
Sorry.
Cormac, who we know is Agent
Silverbill.
Silverbow, he again was hit with one of these fucking bullets.
This poor guy, dude. He cannot catch a break.
So yeah, he's fucked up and he can't teleport them out, which oh fuck, because now Pippa realizes like, oh, they're not on like really our side anymore. But there's
Mhm.
also like other people coming from the background into the spot. It's a shit show. Like
Mhm.
there's three enemies now. So Cormac can't teleport them, but Bryce is able to use her powers to help them escape on like a little boat. She's trying to blind people and stuff. So she's super upset at what Pippa did to the Vanir, and yeah, they're enemies, like I said. Again, Byaxin shows up
Come on, man.
and tells them to go north. Okay. Why? Okay.
Man.
So Bryce is stressing. She wants to try to get the bull out of Cormac, but he's like, you can't because if you try to take it out, then it kind of, I won't say explodes, but it's something similar where like he has to have
Mhm.
surgery in order for it to get out.
Right.
So they're really stressed. They can't get away because they can't. Bryce isn't confident with teleporting yet. And then they see the fucking hind and the fucking harpy and Pollux coming in on other ships.
Mhm.
And they have snipers at them, so Hunt can't like fly them away. And they're like, oh fuck, what the fuck do we do? So then Therian's like, get in the fucking water. And as this is happening, this fucking missile like hits their fucking boat. They get out right in time. Okay. And
Mm-mm-mm.
the hind is on her own little boat now, and she sees them and she recognizes them, which sucks because now someone knows
Mm.
that Bryce and Hunt and Therian and Cormac and Rune are all they're rebelling. They're rebels.
Mhm.
So I don't know how the fuck this happens, but they jump in the water and they're all of a sudden like on something hard, and this they realize they're on a submarine. Like what? A submarine hatch? And this lady pops out and she's like, "Get in!" So they get into this fucking submarine. Oh my god! And the lady who popped out, her name is Commander Sendez, and she says basically this ship is the Ocean Queen's. Okay, different from the River Queen. We like the Ocean Queen so far. We like her.
Mhm.
We learn a lot about this. So she says that the oracle for them sensed that they needed help. So they kind of the Oracle, I guess, gave them a warning. You need to come help these people. And she saw Bryce's light. So that's where they came to pick them up. And it's super random. But during this, Hunt is freaking the fuck out because he really thought that they were about to die. Bryce was about to die and his lightning won't go away. And Rune is like, wait, are y'all mated now? And he notes that Hunt was the same way when Shahar died. So they learn that the submarine is now headed to a place called Revel Canyon, and they learn that this fucking ship can camouflage, and this information has been kept from the Asteri for fucking ever. No one knows about these ships that the River Queen has. I think she has 6 that can camouflage in water, and it cannot be picked up on sonar or any type of whatever. So all the ships drift by them and don't notice. They're good. They're safe. Hunt is still freaking out, okay? So Bryce is like, Commander Sendes, can we have a private room to calm him down? She's like, of course, let's go. Y'all can go to the biodome because for some reason they have a fucking biodome.
These ships are nice, bro.
And this is where we get our first sex scene.
Finally, Jesus Christ. I've been waiting.
Bryce is basically, look, you need to calm down. So the best way to calm down is to have sex. So they have sex for the first time. It's a moment. You should read it. I'm not going to go into detail about it. But during the sex scene, her light and his lightning merge into one, okay? And then she teleports them during this. I don't really remember exactly where on the ship they teleport, but she's able to teleport them, which is big. She's never been able to teleport yet before.
Big.
So, pause on that. We're back in Crescent City with Ethan. Ethan, who stole the rings. Oh my gosh. He breaks all of them inside. There's 4 of them. But guess what? 3 of them look like our girl, Lahaba. Okay? They're fire sprites. But one of them is a fucking dragon.
What?
A dragon shifter.
What?
Yeah.
As if we didn't already have enough stuff going on.
I know, what the fuck. Okay. I don't know how to pronounce her name.
I think it's Ariadne or Ariadne.
Ariadne. Okay.
There you go.
Let's go with that. Ariadne. Her name is Ariadne. Okay. And he asked her, how can I save the mystics who are enslaved by the astronomer? And she says, you can't. But she also casually mentions to him, you need to find a necromancer to find out answers about Connor, which, do we know one? We do. But for some reason, I know, it's crazy. For some reason, no one else can really gather that. And we also learned that she can only shift when the astronomer allows her to because of a tattoo that she has. And that he can fucking track her because Ethan was like, try to escape. And she can't because he tracks her and she can't shift. Anyway, that was like a little side thing. Back on the fucking ship. This ship also has, guess what? A hospital.
This ship's got it all, bro. This is the nicest ship I've ever heard.
Cormac is in the hospital. I know, right? Cormac is in the hospital because, he got fucking shot. And
poor guy.
So apparently when he was, I guess, recovering, he was talking in his sleep or something about Sophie because he's in love with her. And Commander Sendes comes in the room with Hunt and Bryce and says, oh, I heard you talking about someone named Sophie. That's funny because we were supposed to go find her. And unfortunately, she was found dead. Really sad. And Cormac
we finally learned that.
Yeah, so Cormac is obviously very, very upset. And they decide to go to the ship's morgue, which they also have a morgue on the ship. To see,
a whole city.
I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. But so they go there to see Sophie, and it's kind of weird because her corpse is covered in a bunch of numbers and letters and symbols that Cormac doesn't really know what they mean, but they think that she did them to herself in order to send a message before she died. So that's kind of sad. But
what does it mean?
Yeah, so we learn here that the Ocean Queen is kind of a bad bitch. She hates the Asteri, and she, again, has kept this ship secret for long. And Therian asked the commander, Senez, can I have, Sophie's corpse so I can give it to the River Queen? And she's like, why would the River Queen want her corpse? And she kind of came to the conclusion that the River Queen might want her corpse in order to get a necromancer to revive her so she can use her as a fucking thunderbird, which again, red fucking flag to the goddamn River
Mm-mm-mm.
Queen. Um,
Mm-mm-mm.
all right, so they go to sleep. Rune meets with Day again on the bridge, and she called him because she heard of the attack, and she learns that the suits are destroyed, and he tells Day that Sophie is dead. RIP. I'm so sorry you died. You're
Mm-hmm.
cool. But
You were.
anyway,
You
they
really
start to
were.
have, okay, I will say during all these conversations, they're really flirty. They like each other. They
Mm-hmm.
obviously really like each other. It's just kind of a comfort spot for them. And they're talking really seriously about their future. They want to have a future together. And they talk about what if we had kids together? And Rune tells her, oh, I can't have kids. If you remember in Crescent City 1, he's told that he's the last line of his family. Um, so this is the last part of part 2, but I really wanted to throw this in here because I don't know what the fuck this means, but I feel like it's going to be important for future episodes or future books. I'm sorry. Day starts to tell Rune about a story. And
Mm.
she says that there was a witch that lived in the woods in a cottage. And one day a prince came by and wanted to take her as his wife. And she was like, no. So he got all angry, which take no for a fucking answer. Okay. So he decided, oh, I'm
Period.
gonna chase her. I'm gonna chase her because that'll make her want me, right? So she asked the forest for help because she's a witch. And so the forest did help her and first transformed her into a deer and then a fish and then a fucking hawk. Okay, so she's a hawk. And this prince shot her with a bow and arrow. And where her blood fell, olive trees grew. When she hit the land, she transformed into a monster and ripped the prince into pieces. And Rune says he knows a story of a princess of fire waiting for a night to wake her. I don't know what this means, but I don't know what it means. Like, what is it?
I feel like it's gonna be important, like you
It's gonna be
said.
important. Like, what is this? It's almost like a prophecy that's kind of popping up. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
y'all, that was a lot. Thank you for hanging on during that. But we're gonna get into part 3 now.
We're back with part 3, the pit. So we're back at the house, and Declan is trying to figure out the number or what the numbers on Sophie's arm mean. Baxian shows up and tells them he feels like he has proven himself as trustworthy and he wants in on whatever it is that they're doing. But Bryce and Hunt are still very hesitant to involve him because they just don't trust him. So he leaves after that. Hunt finally confronts Bryce about her secret. I don't know if we mentioned it earlier, but there was like a little moment when they were on the boat fighting the rebels where Hunt kind of like looked at Bryce and he could tell that she was like hiding something, but she kind of like was like, shut up, like we'll talk about it later. Like they were doing like their little eyes like communication. And so Hunt finally like brings it up and he's like, dude, what was the thing that you figured out on the boat that you're hiding? What's your secret? And he thinks he's already kind of figured it out. And the fact of the matter that he has. Basically, Bryce has found Emil. She knows where he is. So they head to the meat market to see the Viper Queen because she is the one who has Emil at this point. Bryce already knew this, and we find out that she's actually the one who sent the Viper Queen to go get Emil. And she told her that she needed to do whatever it takes to find this boy. So that is basically like making Hunt mad because he's like, bro, she killed people to find him. And Bryce was like, I didn't think she was gonna do that. He's like, she literally killed, like, remember when Ethan and Therian were doing their investigation earlier and they found the dead Selkie? The Viper Queen is the one who found her and tortured her. So Hunt's pretty mad at Bryce for trusting her, especially after what happened last spring. The Viper Queen is the one who turned Hunt into Micah and got Justinian and Victoria killed. So he's pissed about that. They get into an argument. And at the end of it, Bryce actually ends up being more upset with Hunt because he was mad at her. I love Bryce, but there's a few things in this book where I'm just like, come on, Bryce. Like, you can't be mad at him because he's mad at you because you lied to him. Y'all are supposed to be a team. And Hunt feels the same way, but Hunt is a lot more like understanding actually of Bryce, and Bryce still kind of stays pissy at him. And so basically, they are making arrangements. Well, Bryce has already made arrangements for a meal, but Hunt like is going up to a meal and he's talking to him and he's like, look, man, you really don't need to feel bad about what happened and the fact that people were killed. And Emil's kind of like, what are you talking about? And he's like, when you used your power and everybody in the water died, and Emil is like, I don't have powers. So we find out that this whole time Sophie knew that Emil didn't have powers, and she was actually just doing this to make the rebels want to find him and help get him out of that camp. So she knew that if she just told him that he was just a normal human boy, that they weren't going to care enough to go get him out. So she lied and made it seem like he was a Thunderbird too, so they would have incentive to do that. We also find out at this point that, like I said, Bryce has made arrangements, and the arrangements are actually that her parents are going to adopt him. So the paperwork's already been done. His new name is Cooper Salago, and Fury comes and picks him up and takes him to go live with Ember and Randall. And now Bryce has like a little adopted brother, and he's going to get to like have a normal life with good parents. So we actually love that for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cute. On her way to work from there, because remember, Hunt and her are mad at each other. So she takes off after that and goes to work. And on her way there, she gets a call from Rune to come by the house. Once she gets there, she meets Ariadne for the first time and the other fire sprites. She asks them why they can't just purchase their freedom, like, or I should say, Bryce, asked Rune, like, she's like, why can't we just buy their freedom? We're a prince and a princess, like we should be able to afford this. And Ariadne is like, you can't afford me, dude. Like, I'm basically like invaluable. I was a gift to the astronomer given to him by an archangel. We don't know who, but I feel like that matters, and that's going to come into play. So we know that some archangel gifted this dragon to her specifically, I mean, to him specifically, and that basically it wouldn't matter if they had all the money in the world, they wouldn't be able to buy her. So again, Bryce calls up Jezebel, who's starting to get like a little irritated at this point. She's like, dude, stop
Yeah.
calling me and asking me for shit. But she still agrees to help her. Like every time she gets annoyed with her, she still helps her anyways. And she basically says she's heard of the astronomer and she'll get back to them when she gets some more information. So we also learn at this point that dragonfire is valuable because it's one of the few things that can kill a prince of hell. It can even hurt Apollyon, who's supposed to be like the strongest. So that's kind of big. We switch points of view again, and Hunt is back at headquarters and he sees the Hind and he confronts her and goes up to her and is basically like, dude, I know you saw us that day. Like, when are you going to turn us in? When are you going to say something? And she's just kind of like, yeah, I like seeing you sweat. Like, I'm not in any hurry to turn you in. I kind of like watching you like freak out and squirm about this. And she's like, in fact, you should go to I think it's called Heaven's Gate, or the Angel Gate. Sorry. She's like, you should go to the Angel Gate, which is one of the gateways that we were talking about in the first book, and see what the Harpy did to these two rebels that we found. And so Hunt goes over there to check it out. And when he gets there, he sees that the Harpy has like tortured them in this super fucked up way. She's like performed what's called a blood eagle on them, which is basically like where you like cut open their back and then like take their rib cage and like twist it out so it looks like wings on their back. Super, super dark and messed up. And Hunt like kind of is looking at this and is like, dude, we are in some trouble, because if I cannot see this happen to Bryce, like this could not happen to my baby girl. So he is freaking out at this point. He's like, what have we gotten ourselves into? So from there, he's worried about his safety, but he also questions why Celestina would be okay with this. Because remember, she's the archangel of the city. So if the Harpy did this, that means that she got permission from Celestina. And he's kind of like, why would she even allow this to go on in the city? So he's questioning that at this point. So now we switch again and we go to Therian and he's talking with the River Queen and she's upset because she's jealous that the Ocean Queen had this technology, like these boats that we were talking about, this crazy camouflage and all that. And she's like, "Oh, why don't I have that?" And she does her whiny stuff. She's an insufferable character. I cannot stand
Yeah,
her or her
very
daughter. They're
true.
both terrible. But while he's there, she is like, boo hoo, I'm upset. You need to keep looking for a meal. So we go back to Rune's house, and while he's there, Hypaxia knocks on the door. And
Ooh.
for like a good bit of time, all of the dudes that live in the house, because remember, it's Ethan, Tristan, Declan, Flynn, we got the bro hounds going on right now. And they're all just kind of like drooling over how attractive Hypaxia is. And even Rune is still kind of like likes her, even though he's got this, little flirting going on with Agent Day, and she obviously wants nothing to do with him. And so she knocks on the door and she's like, I need your help. Basically, I need protection. The witches who remember earlier when we said that the witches didn't want her in power because, of her necromancer abilities. She's like, I'm worried that they are going to try to attack me at the mating ceremony because it would just be such an opportune time. So I need your protection. And I don't even trust my own bodyguards, but if I use one of your bodyguards, it won't look suspicious because we're engaged to be married. So nobody would even bat an eye at that. And Rune actually is like, okay, yeah, I'll do this because he realizes that it can benefit him. I mean, I don't know if that's the only reason he does it, but he does realize that this can benefit him too. So he's like, I'll protect you. And then I'll also put Ethan on your protection as well. And Ethan actually agrees to this, even though he's not like, under Rune's command. He agrees to it because remember what Ethan needs? He needs a necromancer, and one just walked through the door. So now he's like, he goes to Hypaxia and he's like, I'll help you, but will you help me communicate with my brother? And she's kind of like, you know what? Yeah, I actually can help you. The only thing is, it has to be done on the night of the autumnal equinox because that's the day when the veil is the thinnest. So I'll be able to speak with the dead, like with your brother. And she's like, we gotta have a lot going on, but I'm gonna make time. We'll make it happen. And then back to what Rune benefits from this. We find out that basically there's a law that says that if a royal needs a slave, it's so messed up, but a slave bad enough, they can actually take them without any repercussions. So if he needs Ariadne to protect Hypaxia, then they won't get in trouble for the fact that Ethan stole the dragon from the astronomer. So that's, that benefits them as well. And Hypaxia is kind of like, cool, yeah, she can join and that'll be good. And that's some crazy Fey law shit because that doesn't make any sense, but it's the way that it works. We switch back to Hunt and Therian and tell him to stop looking for a meal. Therian is basically like, what the hell are you talking about? I've been spending this whole ass time that we've been reading this looking for this kid. Like, what do you mean stop looking for him? And Hunt kind of like hints to him. He's like, I can't tell you what happened or where he is, but I can just tell you that like he's been found and he doesn't have any powers. Like the River Queen doesn't want him anyways. Like it's not worth your time. Stop looking for him. So Therian is kind of annoyed at this, but he decides like he's like, well, look, I'm gonna keep making it look like I'm searching for this kid because as long as I'm looking for him, I don't have to be beneath the surface. Like I can stay above and the River Queen doesn't know that he's been found. So I'm going to take advantage of this and I'm going to make it seem like I'm looking for him, even though I understand that I'm never going to find him. So Hunt then goes to the Fate archives, which, if you remember, is where Bryce works. And he's trying to do some research. Oh, I'm sorry. I should have said this earlier. So when he told them that when he told Therian that Emil was already found, he also warned Therian about these things called Death Stalkers and that they've been appearing around the city. And he tells him to warn his people because these are like extremely fast, strong, dangerous demons from hell that are, attacking people. And he just tells him like to warn him. So then he goes to the Fey archives, and when he's there, he's there to do research on the Death Stalkers, but really he's there to see his girl. They kind of like apologize to each other and they both admit that, they said and did things that were wrong. They forgive each other and it's super cute. And then they have makeup sex in the library because, a little extra steam never hurt
Why not?
anybody.
Why not?
And so then we switch back to Rune and Day, and they're meeting up, and she warns him that Pippa is definitely going to retaliate for them blowing up the mech suits on the ship. Like, she's probably going to attack the city. Like, we should be prepared for that. So Rune confides in her at this point and tells her basically that like he feels like he's really getting close to her and he's sharing things with her that he's never shared with anybody else, and he's starting to care for her. And Dave freaks out at this. She's like, bro, no, like if you feel like this, like we're getting too close and you don't need to keep sharing secrets with me and we need to stop. Like this is dangerous. Like we can't do this. And so she leaves their little psychic connection or whatever. And we now go to Bryce. And at this point, we find out that because she addressed herself as Princess Bryce Dannon when she called the ballet director to help Juniper, she is now officially viewed as a princess of the Fae in Fae eyes. And her name is no longer Bryce Quinlan. It's now officially Bryce Dannon, which is kind of like, ugh, but she's always going to be Bryce Quinlan to me. So the Autumn King shows up at this point and actually talks with her. And he tells her that he can literally smell on her that Hunt and her are mates, but that she has to continue this engagement with Cormac at least until he says so. And she's kind of like, whatever, dude. Like, we were already going to do that anyways. Like, unbeknownst to you, like, we were going to continue. Like, we're agreeing that we're pretending to be engaged. Like, nobody's like, I don't think I'm going to be forced to do this. So she agrees. And as he's leaving, he just happens to like glance at her desk and sees those numbers that she has written down that were carved in Sophie's arm. And he kind of like recognizes these numbers, and he warns her that the Asteri will not go after Hunt if they catch her, that they're going to go after Ember and Randall, and that she needs to be careful. He tells her like, I've spent my whole life searching for the truth, and just be careful. Like, you're in a different game now. This is a different level. So he leaves after that and leaves her with that. And from there, she calls Hypaxia because Bryce is like going through a lot. She needs some girl chat and she doesn't have anybody left. Juniper doesn't want anything to do with her. Fury is partners with Juniper, so she's also kind of giving her the cold shoulder, even though she's helping her. She's like, not it. Fury's always not been there to really kiki like that. And so she calls Hypaxia and they go to a bar and they're drinking and they're having like a little girl moment. And Hypaxia actually shares with her that she's kind of concerned about why all of a sudden the witches are like losing their powers. She's learned a lot of things from her tutors because remember, they were like, the whole thing is that her tutors were dead. Like, they were alive so long ago, like before the Asteri like were even in power. And so they know a lot of things and they've kind of been telling her some information, and she actually already knew about the Bone Quarter. Like, she was already aware that like the Bone Quarter wasn't this like happy place where people go to live their second lives, and that their light was being fed to the city and all that, like their second light. And so she confides in Bryce with that. And then as they're leaving, Ethan out of nowhere gets attacked by one of the Death Stalkers that we were talking about earlier. And that thing like mangles him, like it rips his throat out. He's gravely injured. He's unable to do anything. And then Bryce and Hypaxia are kind of left to deal with the fight because the demon is still there. It's just Ethan is kind of incapacitated. And so Bryce like yells at Hypaxia. She's like, dude, shoot your power into me. And Hypaxia is like, what? But she hits Bryce with some power, and Bryce is then able to teleport over to where Ethan is and take the demon out. They, make it out, and Hypaxia, remember, she's a med witch still. So she takes Ethan back to like her compound to heal him. And then Bryce goes back to Hunt, and Hunt is kind of trying to figure out who is sending these Death Stalkers, because they're really dangerous demons, and he doesn't understand how Bryce and Hypaxia like got away. Right? Hunt like has fought these things in the past, and he has like this massive scar down his back that like from where he got injured by one of these things. And he's just really not understanding how Hypaxia and Bryce could just walk away without a scratch on them. This is kind of weird, and we don't necessarily get any answers to this right now, but he thinks that it might have something to do with the witches that Hypaxia was talking about. At this point, like we cut back a little bit later and Ethan wakes up. He's feeling kind of shitty. He's like, he feels like he failed because, he wasn't able to protect Bryce and Hypaxia. And also something that like we find out is that like Ethan basically told Ariadne that she could go up on the roof and just like keep a watch out there. But when she went up, she didn't actually stay up there. Like she took off. And so nobody even knows where Ariadne is anymore. And Ethan just feels like he kind of fucked up in that way. So he's kind of sulking a little bit. And then Declan and Flynn show up to check on him. And they're like just super cute. And they have their little bro moment. And Ethan kind of realizes that for the first time in a long time, like he has a pack again and he's got friends and people that actually really care about him. So that's a cute little moment. And then I guess we find out at this point too that Therion, remember, he's pretending like he's still looking for a meal. And so he's going to stay above the surface at this point, and he is going to be moving in with them too. So we've just got the frat house going on over here at this point. Like, I mean, it was already a frat house, but we've added Ethan and Therion to the mix, and it's just boy central over there. We also find out that in like a weird twist of events, something that we weren't even informed of, but like Therion and Hypaxia kind of made a connection at the summit last spring, and they're kind of great friends. And he calls her Pax, and they have little nicknames for each other. They've been hanging out, and so he knows her. And that's just kind of random, but it's just kind of like, huh, that's like a weird thing that we just threw in there that wasn't even mentioned, before. So now we cut back to Bryce and Hunt, and like I said before, like Bryce called up Hypaxia because she needed somebody to talk to. Bryce is really going through it. She kind of starts breaking down. She's really upset about the princess situation. She's crying. And while she's crying, she tells Hunt, she kind of has an epiphany. And she's like, oh, I have an idea, but you're not really going to like it. And so Hunt just, whatever, he goes with it because Bryce is his girl and Hunt will do anything for her. So cut back to Rune and Agent Day. They're having a little mind meeting again, and they apologize to each other for how they left things after the last conversation. Rune teases her about them meeting in real life and like how she owes him a beer. And she's like, I'll buy you a beer. And he's like, yeah, okay. When is this actually going to happen? And she's like, well, I'm going to be at this mating ceremony and we could meet there. Even though she acknowledges that this is a bad idea, she still makes this plan to meet Hunt and meet Rune. And their thing is that they're gonna meet by the fountain at midnight, and they're gonna address each other as day and night. And like if the other one responds, then they'll know that they had the right person. And like it's gonna be like this little meet cute. But like I said, even while doing it, Agent Day admits this is a bad idea. But fuck it. I'm trying to meet you. I'm trying to see what you look like, boy. And so and so they agree to it. And then we cut to 2 weeks later. So 2 weeks later, we are heading to the ball. And well, I guess the ball slash the mating ceremony. And Hunt and Bryce show up together. And immediately they walk in and they kind of like the Autumn King sees them walking in together and he's like, what the hell? Y'all are not like, and they just like side swoop. They just walk right past him and walk right up to Ephraim and Celestina. And Bryce declares Hunt, this is my mate, Hunt. And Celestina's like, oh, okay, I give my blessing. I bless this union. I'm so happy for you guys. And after that, it's pretty much just a moot point because now that Celestina has blessed their union, there's not much that the Autumn King can do about it. And Bryce kind of looks at him and he's just like, and she's, did you like forget to tell people that we called the engagement off? You're so silly. I can't believe you forgot that. And the Autumn King has two choices. He can either call Bryce a liar or he can just agree and say that, this is what happened. And so he just says, whatever, how silly of me. I must have forgotten. I can't believe I didn't mention anything. And they leave it there. Oh, I should say also that Cormac at this point was pretty upset that she did it in this way. He doesn't care that she ended the engagement, but he's like, bro, we said that we would talk about this, that we would do this together. And you kind of just embarrassed me in front of all these people, but I guess I'll let it go. And so even though he's upset, we just kind of move on. We switch over to Hypaxia because remember, everybody's at the party together right now. So we switch over to Hypaxia and she walks up to Rune and she asks him to stand with her as she finally introduces herself to the Hind. So remember that Hypaxia and the Hind are actually half sisters. They had the same mom, but she has never actually met her before. And she's like kind of nervous. I mean, who wouldn't be going to introduce themselves to the Hind? Like, this is just kind of crazy. So she walks up to them, and the Hind at first just kind of seems kind of cold and uninterested, but at the same time, she does send Pollux away. And Hypaxia doesn't send Rune away, but Rune uses this opportunity because he's kind of, oh, it's kind of close to midnight. I'll just kind of sneak off while she's talking to her sister and walk over to this fountain. So Rune drifts away and he's walking over to the fountain. And as he's coming around, he sees somebody standing there. And who is it? It's the Harpy. And he's like, nah, bro. Now remember, the Harpy is this bitch that blood eagled those two people in the square. Everybody talks, I mean, the Hind is crazy, but she's also nuts. And so he's like, oh, hell no. But he's got to find out if this is her. So he kind of walks up to her and he's like, Day? And she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Get away from me. And so he's like, oh, my bad, my bad. And he just walks away. And as he's walking away, he also notices that the Hind is standing there staring at his ass. And he's just kind of like, let me get the fuck out of here before somebody catches me. There's no way that Agent Day is going to show her face seeing these two crazy bitches here. So he leaves. It's kind of sad for him. He doesn't get to meet Agent Day. But while that's going on, Bryce and Hunt are feeling all good after they've gotten away with this official thing. And they're like, oh, we're together now. We're mates. And they're feeling all good. They're getting all frisky and they're looking for a room to kind of hook up in. And they walk into the room. And well, I shouldn't say they walk into a room. They go up to a door and the door is locked. So their first instinct is to bust it open. Hunt's like, no door's locked for me, and uses his fucking strength to bust the door down. And why was the door locked? Because two people are already in there hooking up. Okay, duh. If the door's locked, it means knock or don't fucking enter. But anyways, shock is on both of their faces because who's in there hooking up? Hypaxia and Celestina.
What?
Okay. Okay. Shit
So
just got
Hunt was
weird.
right.
Yeah, Hunt was like, oh shit, I was right about this girl not liking men like that. So immediately, like, remember earlier when Ellie mentioned that as soon as Bryce was in danger, Hunt just started charging up. He couldn't control himself. He was just getting mad and wanted to protect her. Celestina kind of has the same thing going on. And remember, she's an archangel, so she's pretty powerful in her own right. She starts charging up and getting all upset. And immediately Bryce is like, whoa, whoa, don't worry. We're not going to tell anybody. We're going to, not only can we keep secrets, but there's no benefit to us telling anybody. You're safe. And Celestina is still charged up. She's not really calming down. But then Bryce goes, look, I was already thinking about this, but we could form it. You guys could be my allies. I'm a Fae princess. You're an archangel. You're the queen of the witches. We're three bad bitches. We could team up and be allies, and this would benefit all of us. So when she says that, Celestina is kind of okay. She's calming down. Hypaxia is like, I trust them. Me and Bryce are friends. I have an established like relationship with them. I trust them. Let's calm down. And so everything is fine to the point where Bryce feels comfortable enough to leave and Hunt is still in the room with Celestina. And she makes this kind of comment that's how she views love as a weakness. And she kind of wishes that or not even kind of, she wishes every day that she was not in love with Hypaxia because it only hurts her. But the heart wants what it wants. And she's in love with Hypaxia and there's nothing she can do about it. And it's a weakness because if you have somebody that you love, then that person can be used to hurt you. So we flash back to Rune and he meets up in the mind again with Agent Day and they talk about what happened at the party. And she tells him that, like, yeah, I saw you over by the fountain. I know who you are, Rune Dannon. And he's kind of like, call me Rune again. and,
I'll call
and
you Rune.
yeah,
I'll call you
literally,
Rune.
all
Don't
right.
worry about it.
And she's like, call me Rune again. And so they have a moment and okay, so they're having their little moment where she's like, but she still will not tell who she is because, remember, she saw him, he didn't see her. So now we switch to Bryce, and Bryce and them are at home. And because it is the autumnal equinox, remember I said that the veil is thinner on this night. That's why Hypaxia was going to be able to reach out to Connor. And Apollyon comes into Bryce's mind this time, and he basically tells her that the reason that he was able to go into Hunt's mind easier is because Hunt's kind was specifically bred to be able to speak or to be receptive to speaking to the princes of hell or whatever that matters. I don't know what it means, but it matters. And then he also drops the little bomb that he helped fight Peleus because Thea was actually in line with the rebels. She also did not want the Asterian power and was trying to help overthrow them. And it also turns out that Adis and Queen Thea were in love with each other, and they were actually partners. And that is part of the reason why Adis has an attachment to Bryce, I think. And that is why when Peleus slayed Thea, Adis called Apollyon, and Apollyon came to help because, he's like, you killed my brother's girl. You got to die now. And yeah. All right, guys. So if you notice, things are a little bit different right now. Um, Hel and I recorded this last night along with the rest of the podcast. However, we weren't very happy with how it turned out. There's just so much going on at this point in the book, and I felt I didn't really do the best job explaining it. So I'm back right now. I know she's not with me, but I'm going to go ahead and finish the recap of the book from where we just left off. And I think that you guys will really appreciate the fact that I put a lot more effort into really explaining what's going on at the end of this book to help get you ready for CC3. We will switch back to the end to how we normally did, and Hel will be doing the epilogue. So don't worry about that. Just bear with me. This part's a lot, and I'll give you guys a little bit of warning throughout when we get to the really, really like complicated part. So, all right. So we left off with everybody at the ball. After the ball happens, Rune meets up with Day and they talk about the meeting they were supposed to have by the fountain. She tells him she knows who he is now and calls him by his name, Rune. They have a sweet conversation, but again, she's pulled out of this meeting by this mysterious man who keeps pulling her away. We flash over to Hypaxia and Ethan, and they are off in an orchard beginning the ritual to speak with Connor. Hypaxia is chanting, and it starts to get really cold, and Hypaxia tells him she can feel a strong presence. She tells him to prepare because she doesn't know how long she can actually hold this due to the strength of the being that's coming. And so when the entity finally appears, they quickly realize that it's not Connor, but in fact, it's actually the Underking himself. So Hypaxia tries to send him away, but he absolutely refuses. Ethan then demands to see Connor, but he still tells him no. He tells him that Connor is safe, and if he wants it to stay that way, his behavior will determine whether or not that happens. He then says he wants to play a game and that he's long been curious about just how powerful Hypaxia is. We go over back to Hunt and Bryce, and after they get a little steamy moment, they're sleeping, and Bryce is awoken in a dream state. She says that she's aware that she's asleep and safely at home, but also that who is standing in front of her is in fact very real. It turns out that it is Apollyon who's standing in front of her, and he was able to contact her due to the veil being extra thin. He begins asking her more questions about why she's not training and telling her he's ready to start this war. So he really needs her to get her shit together and, begin her training. He tells her at this point that the reason that he helped fight Peleus and he basically killed Peleus was because Thea was actually helping them to try to overthrow the Asteri, and that Adis and Thea were actually in love with each other. He says a bunch of things about how Adis was a fool and that she's smart not to trust them because that was kind of Thea's downfall. But he also is like, you know, I need you to help. Like, this is getting serious. Like, we really need to make this war happen. And she goes, or she asked him why he sent the Reapers after her. And he says, I didn't. And so we get another important line here about Hunt, basically. And Apollyon says that he was bred to be receptive to Apollyon's kind. Um, Meaning the princes of hell and demons. So we don't really get much more on that, but I think that that's pretty important. Finally, he tells her to use the horn to open the gates to hell, and she like flat out refuses. She says, hell no, I'm not doing that. And he says, well, come find me in hell when you learn the truth. We then flash back to Ethan and Hypaxia, and she begins making her way through this maze that the Underking has like set up. And the maze is made of wards. So every time that they go to take a step, like there's a ward there, and she has to use her powers to get through it. She tells Ethan to keep up, and like in the distance, they hear the howling of the hellhounds. And so I guess it's important to know that these are the hunting hounds of the House of Flame and Shadow. We then cut back to Bryce, and she's training with all the guys. Hunt's there, Rune's there, Therian's there, Cormac's there. Literally all the guys are there. She's telling them about the visit from Apollyon, and then she's training to be using her teleporting abilities that she's kind of found out she has at this point. Declan tells her that he believes that she draws power from forms of pure energy, and when you factor in the horn, which needs a blast of power to activate it, that she becomes extremely powerful, but Rune calls it a liability. Cormac then kind of drops on her that he's like really angry with her for how she announced the end of their engagement, and that he's literally only there because he knows that if he didn't show up, that Rune wouldn't continue to help communicate with Agent Day, even though we kind of know that they got a little thing going on at this point. So he definitely would. He says he can move past it if she doesn't hide anything else from him, and kind of organically the subject of Emil comes up. She at first is like, I'm not hiding anything else, and he can tell that she's lying. And so they get to the topic of Emil. Bryce eventually tells him that he's in a safe place and reveals that he has no powers and that he's protected, and Cormac can't really do anything to like help him anyways. So it's best to just let it go, and that he's fulfilled his promise to Sophie so he can rest. Cormac, after a bunch of arguing, he finally like just agrees and is like, okay, well, if he's safe, then it's fine. So at that point, Ethan and Hypaxia show up, and they're kind of covered in blood and grime, and they're looking all disheveled. And we basically learned that they have been running through this maze all night. Like, they ran straight through the maze and they haven't slept, and they're just now getting there, and they came straight from there. Ethan then tells Bryce that the Underking has demanded that she be at Erd's temple within the hour, or he will kill Connor and the pack of devils. As we know, they're already dead, but he's like, I will kill them for like their final death. We then cut back to Therion, and he is in a meat market where he overhears people talking about a dragon who was in the fighting pits last night. He has an idea to go through his head, or that goes through his head, where he's kind of like, well, if I can get her and bring her as a gift to the River Queen, if she finds out about me leaving her daughter at the party, she won't be as upset. So he's like, this is a great idea. I'm going to get Ariadne and I'm going to take her to the River Queen as like a gift. So if she gets pissed about this, like she won't literally kill me. He goes up to the Viper Queen, or here, let me say this. There's like a little side note. He calls up like Flynn and is like, I found Ariadne, and Flynn shows up to the meat market too. This isn't really important to like what's happening in the story now, but I do think that it's kind of important to mention that they have a little bit of like a relationship going on. And I think that that might come into play in the later books, even though right now she's kind of like it's like a will they, won't they? Like she's kind of like teasing him, like, I don't really like you. And like, why are you even here anyways? And so I think he really cares, but I'm going to leave that there. So while Therian is talking to the Viper Queen, he asks her if she has any intel on the rebels. And she says, yeah, maybe I have some, but I'm not going to give it to you for free. And since she's making a lot of money off of Ariadne fighting in the pits, she asked him if it's possible for him to create a situation like the one Rune did with hypaxia. So basically, if he can make it so that way, instead of it being like she stole Ariadne, it's like she's needed for a royal reason, and that legally gives her the ability to keep her, basically. Therian is kind of like no at first, but she literally won't give him the intel without it. So he finally agrees, and he's like, give me the info on Pippa. And then after looking at the clock, she just looks and she's like, well, you can call your friends and find out where Pippa is. And Therian's kind of like, what the hell does that mean? So he starts trying to call Bryce. He's calling Hunt. He's calling Rue. He's calling everybody he can, but nobody's picking up. And that is because they're all at Erd's temple answering the call that the Underking made. We go over to Erd's temple where everyone has gathered, and the Underking is there waiting. He tells them that the Asteri are the ones who called the Reapers, just kind of drops that in there, but they're not really sure if they can even trust him. So they don't know if they should even listen to that. Bryce then asked him about the numbers that they found on Sophie's arm, and he just points and tells them to ask her. And when Bryce turns around, she sees that Pippa and the rebels are all entering the building and surrounding them. So Rune runs over, he shuts the doors, and they're trying to like get through and knock the doors down, and they're like, come on guys, don't you want to play with us? And so they're trapped at this point. They don't know how they're going to get out. And then Bryce kind of has, a little epiphany. She's like, okay, I've got an idea. So she tells Hunt to hit her with his power and kind of, give her that blast of energy she needs to teleport. And she just teleports away. And then she comes back like a short time later and she's just like, well, that was easy. We got to get out of here. There's not much time left now. And nobody really knows what's going on, but she's just like, we got to go. So with no other way out, she just starts teleporting everybody. First, she grabs Hypaxia, then she comes back, she grabs Rune, and right before she comes back for Hunt, Pollux and the others show up and start fighting the rebels themselves. So now Bryce teleports back, but when she gets there, she's like completely wiped. She can't teleport anymore. Her brain is like fried. She's literally bleeding from her nose because she's used so much energy. And so Hunt is like, shit, shit, shit. What are we going to do? And he's like, I don't want to risk the Asteri and everybody finding out that we are working with the rebels by like literally fighting my way out of here. But if that's what I've got to do to protect Bryce, then that's what I'm going to do. So right as he's getting ready to like just charge up and start lighting everybody up with lightning, Baxian shows up. And Baxian like kind of takes them to this area that was hidden. It's like this little room. And as soon as they get in there, Bryce, like Hunt is holding Bryce at this point because remember she was like so weak from teleporting, and she just like rolls out of his arms and then like picks his gun up and points it at Baxi and is like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? Like, why do you keep showing up? Why are you helping us? Like, what's your deal? I don't trust you. Like, tell me what the fuck is going on right now. So he just kind of is casually like walking around, like looking at like different things in the room, and he just says the words, through love, all is possible. And he pulls down his shirt and shows Bryce a tattoo that he has on his heart that says the same thing. And when Bryce looks, she immediately recognizes it as Danica's handwriting. What is going on, man? So this is where we find out that Danica was actually Baxian's mate. She calls him a liar. She's like, I don't believe you. How the hell did you two even meet? And he tells her that 2 years before Danica passed, she was researching him because of his ability being so rare amongst the shifters. And when they talk, when she came to meet with him and talk with him, immediately they both were like, "Oh shit, we're mates, dude." Like they both knew immediately. So Bryce kind of acknowledges that she remembered Danica had stopped sleeping around about 2 years before her death. And at the time, Bryce didn't really know why. But she's still kind of hesitant. She's like, this just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would Danica keep this from me? And Hunt realizes himself that this must have been around the time when Baxian started to change and become a better person. And since it was after he had already left Sandriel, like Triari, he wasn't really aware that Baxian was becoming this kind of person. So we also find out that Baxian reveals that he doesn't really think that Danica was using synth or selling synth, and that it was all a cover for something else. And she was actually killed because of this research she was doing. Danica was researching where they all come from. And by they, I mean the veneer. Remember, she was a history major, and Ethan had mentioned that she was working on a few projects that she had dropped, but she continued working on trying to figure out exactly where the veneer come from, like their lineages. And so that was why she was meeting with Baxian in the first place, because his line goes back pretty far. She also was seeking out an alternative at this point to Sabine because she didn't want to leave the wolves in her hands. And she really didn't believe that she would be alive to be the leader of the pack. Danica kind of knew that what she was doing was dangerous. And she was just like, I don't know if I'm going to be here to lead my people, and I cannot lead them with Sabine. So she was looking for a replacement for that as well. And then after meeting Baxian, she also began looking for a world where they could possibly be together, because she was like, if I can't live in this world and be safe, at least maybe I can find a leader for my people. And then me and you can go to another place where we can be together and not be in danger. So Bryce is still really upset. She keeps questioning him, and every time she asks him a question, he has another answer. She finally asks him if he knows why Sophie would carve numbers into herself, and or I guess like literally as she was dying. And Baxian just begins to recite this number from memory. And both Hunt and Bryce are like, why the hell do you like know this number? And he tells them, I'm the one who gave it to Danica. And this is where we find out that Baxian was obviously one of Sandriel's top like bodyguards, or part of her top, military personnel or whatever. So he actually, well, and I guess it's important to say that Sandriel was also super like close under the Asteri. Like they trusted her, she worked closely with them. So Baxian went with her on a mission or not even a mission, but just to go visit the Eternal City one day. And while they were there, Sandriel went into this room. And when she came out, she was just kind of looking like stunned. Her face was pale. She looked like, she had seen something that was just like left her in like a very weird state. And he noticed that and was like, that's kind of weird. And so he memorized the numbers and gave them to Danica for her to look into them. Once he gave those numbers to Danica, she became obsessed with finding out what was in there. So from there, they go to Declan, and he goes to do his, extra fancy hacker shit, and is like, I can't get past their security system, but I can access their cameras. And so he begins like going through the footage. And what he sees is that Sophie actually did go to the Eternal City, and she went into that room that was labeled under the number that Baxian had given her. And when she comes out of that room, she has the same exact like expression and look on her face that Sandriel did. She's pale, she looks shocked, like like she just found out something, that like her whole world is turned upside down now. Like it's just this look of just utter like, what the fuck is going on? So Bryce knows that whatever Sophie saw is what got her killed, and that they have to get into that room. We cut to Therian and Ethan, and Therian tells him that look, this plan is extremely dangerous. So if you've got anything that you need to like do, any loose ends that you need to tie up, I highly suggest you do it before we head out to go to the Eternal City. And Bryce calls Fury and she's like, okay, I know you know the Eternal City because you work there. And Fury's like, yeah, but you guys are a bunch of idiots and like you are not going to make it out of there. This is stupid, but I'm going to give you the map and then I'm leaving the city. Like I'm getting Juniper and I'm heading out. And just as a little side note, Bryce asked her if she can take Syrinx with her because she doesn't want to leave him alone unprotected while all this is going down. So we kind of just realized that like Bryce does realize how serious this is. And like whatever they're about to embark on is pretty dangerous, but we've got to get the answers. So back with Ethan, he goes to the den in Moonwood and he's talking to the Prime, and Sabine is there too. And he's telling him that there is this mystic wolf being held by this man called the astronomer. And Sabine is just like screaming at him, like exactly how Sabine is. She doesn't know how to communicate normally, like a normal person. So she's just screaming at him, calling him all these names. And the Prime isn't really saying anything. So Ethan's just kind of like, look, I did what I could. Like, I warned you, I told you about it. Now I've got to go help my friends. And Hypaxia is there with him, so they like turn and they go to leave. And Ethan is like I guess Sabine left the room first after she screamed at them. So, Ethan and Hypaxia are going to leave. And as they're leaving, the Prime comes up to him and he's like, what did this mystic look like? And he tells her, she's got brown hair, she's pretty pale. And he goes, did she smell like snow and embers? And Ethan's like, yeah, actually, she did. How the hell did you know that? And this is when he tells Ethan that there is another Fendir heir and that Sabine is not the only one. And after learning this, like Ethan immediately realizes that he kind of fucked up because now that Sabine knows that this other heir is out there, he knows that she will do anything to take her out because she doesn't want anybody questioning her power. So he's like, okay, I can't go with them now. I have to go watch over the mystic wolf because like she's in danger. Like Amelie and Sabine could show up to kill her at any time. And so he's like, Hypaxia, can you please tell everybody that I'm not coming? And she agrees. And then he calls up Bryce and leaves, or not even, I don't think he calls her. He texts Bryce and leaves her this message. And Bryce responds that she'll always have his back and she loves him. And it's just kind of like a cute moment between them. That's where we leave Ethan. He's not going to help, them do this mission anymore. He's got other priorities to go watch this wolf. Darian, when he told Ethan that he needed to tie up his loose ends, he also had some loose ends that he needed to tie up. So he went down to the docks to meet with the River Queen's daughter and just be honest with her, telling her, like, look, I'm not really interested in you. I don't want to marry you. I don't want to be like betrothed to you and the prince of the river and all of this stuff. And she doesn't take it well. She freaks out. She's like, meet me at the blue court. I'm going to get my mother. And Therian realizes, like, dude, I don't have much time. Like, I have to come up with a plan. So he just takes off running and he runs straight to the meat market to meet with the Viper Queen. And he just straight up offers to become her slave. Like he's like, anything is better than, being basically a slave underwater. And she's like, are you sure? Like, that's just not done. Like, Veneer, you're not a slave right now. Like, you can't just sell yourself into slavery. And she goes, but you know what you can do? Instead of becoming my slave, you can choose to defect from your position as the commander of intelligence for the River Queen. And you can basically swear allegiance to me. And he's like, okay, whatever. Anything is better than, working for the River Queen. So she's like, all right. And so she gives him his blood And up until this point, like he could literally feel the presence of the River Queen like coming after him. Like the ground was shaking, and like he could tell that she was coming. And as soon as he drinks the Viper Queen's blood, that all goes away. And so he's like, okay, cool. Like I made it. I'm not there anymore. But he quickly realizes that he didn't really know what he signed up for because he's not really fully in control of himself. But he tells the Viper Queen, or she tells him, like, your first fight's tonight, so you need to get ready. And he's like, look, I'm so sorry. Like, I have to help my friends do this mission. And she's like, well, you should have thought about that before you sold your allegiance to me. And he's like, look, I swear, as soon as this is done, like, I will come back and you can fight me to the death for all I care, but I cannot abandon my friends. I have to go help them. And she's like, okay, fine, I'll let you go help them. And she's like, but as soon as you're done, bring your ass back here and you're mine. And he just feels this like presence that's like not even his voice just respond with like, okay. And this is where he questions kind of like if he made a mistake, but it's too late. He belongs to the Viper Queen now. So now we cut back over to Rune and Agent Day, and they're having a meeting, and she tells him basically like, we're getting too close. We can't keep doing this. Like, we're too bonded. Like, it's becoming dangerous at this point. Like, this has to stop. And Rune kind of pushes back. He doesn't want this to end. And so she tells him, just like as they're like having an actual conversation, she brings up the fact that she kind of lied earlier in the story when she was telling the story of the witch in the woods. I don't know if we mentioned this, but what happened was Brune fell asleep while she was telling the story, and he woke up before she did. And as he got close to her, he tried to like get a look at her face, and she woke up and freaked out and basically told him like the end of the story was like the witch turned into a monster and she killed everything, and that was how it ended. And so this is where she tells him like, look, that's not the real end of the story. She tells him it didn't end badly. The witch fell to earth after being pierced by the arrow, and the forest transformed her into a monster. She killed the prince and his hounds, and she stayed that way for 100 years, to the point where she had even forgotten that she was ever a witch. One day, a warrior arrived to slay her, but when he saw her, he wasn't afraid of her. He saw her as a thing of beauty and loved her anyways, and his love changed her back into a witch, and they lived peacefully forever in the forest for the rest of their immortal lives. So that's really cute, and they have like a little moment, and we finally get their little steamy, endeavor, which is kind of even funnier because they're not even really in the same room and they like literally have mental sex. And so after that, Rune tells her about their plan to break into the Eternal City. And she is immediately on guard and is like, don't do it. Like, don't. I won't be able to help you if stuff goes wrong. And as she's like begging him not to go, she's again getting pulled out of this meeting by this freaking dude. And like as she's leaving, she gets out like, Rune, they know and she cuts out, and then she comes back in for just a second and she's like, the dungeons, but then she's gone and she can't get back in contact with him. So Rune immediately like goes to Hunt and Bryce, and he tells them about what happened, and he's like, look, I'm still going with you guys, but I also have to find Day. Like, she's in the dungeon, she's not safe. I have to like help her. Hunt and Bryce do agree to help him, even though they don't think it's the best idea. And they go ahead and set their plan into action. So they decide that what they need is a distraction for the Asteri. And so they call Cormac. And he's heard that Pippa is actually planning an attack on an Asteri lab where they make the weapons and the mech suits that we were talking about earlier. So the plan is that Cormac and Therian are going to go to the lab, which is about 20 miles from the Eternal City, and they hope that Pippa will see them and then come after them, and then they can blow the lab up. And the Ophian rebels and the Dreadwolves while they do it, basically. So they're like, we could take them all out by blowing this lab up, and this is going to be like a great plan. And then while they're doing that, Declan is going to hack into the cameras at the Eternal City and kind of turn them away so they can't see Bryce, Hunt, and Rune while they're there. And then the Sari will also be distracted by the scene that's happening at the lab. And this is just a random fact, but I think it's kind of cute because of where we left things earlier. So Bryce, kind of in the same vein of what Therian was saying about tying up loose ends, she calls Juniper to apologize and tell her that she loves her. And Juniper doesn't, respond, but it's just like a sweet moment because Bryce just isn't sure what's about to happen. So while she's doing that, Hunt heads over to the Comitium and he's grabbing his weapons. He's grabbing his Umbra Mortis hat or helmet. And on the way out, he sees Celestina and she tells him, kind of like, I hope if you ever need an ally, like you'll come to me. And Hunt's like, yeah, yeah, if I ever need help, like I'll definitely come to you. But he kind of notes that her behavior is a little bit off. And we leave it at that, but he's just kind of like, that was weird. So all right, guys. Now is where we really begin this mission. Therian and Cormac head off to the lab, and when they get there, Pippa and her team are already there. Meanwhile, Bryce, Hunt, and Rune are at the Eternal City. Cormac is helping them teleport into the city, and then he is going to teleport back to the lab, which is, like I said, about 20 miles away. So before they go in, Rune just tells Bryce, like, he's like, look, I think that you are going to be a better ruler than the Autumn King, and that you should really be the one in charge. And if we make it out of here, I will back you in a coup against him and help you overthrow him, basically, because like you are a better ruler than he could ever be. And she's like, no, like you're the next in line. Like you should be the one to take over. You would be a great ruler too. And he's like, thank you, but you're the better choice. And you're actually even more powerful than the Autumn King. So the Fae will respect that and they'll respect you because of that. And so that's just like a sweet little moment. And then Cormac teleports him in, and then he comes back to get her. And he tells her that, he actually agrees with Rune and that he realizes that when the Oracle told them that their, mingling would bring prosperity, that it wasn't their marriage, but actually them becoming allies. And it's just kind of like a sweet Cormac moment. And it's just kind of like, oh, he's a good guy. He realizes that the prophecy was true and that just them being allies is going to really help their people. So he then has gotten Bryson, she's the last one, and he teleports back to the lab. Hunt then hits Bryce with his power, and she teleports directly in to this, like, or into the archives. But when she gets there, she's in this stairwell kind of area. So she follows the stairs down until she gets to this long hallway. And she's looking around and she sees 7 crystal pipes, and they're all like kind of shooting upwards. And each of them is labeled with a plaque and like a small little black screen. And each plaque has a name on it. And these are the names of the Asteri. So we've got like Polaris, Sirius, Regulus, et cetera, et cetera. She realizes that the thing shooting upwards is actually first light. And then this little screen comes on. And on the bottom, it actually says Regulus power level 65%. So Bryce is like, wait a second. And she kind of realizes that this means that the Asteri are actually feeding on the first light, and that the palace is made from the same material that the gates are in the cities, which allows them to channel the first light and capture it basically, and then consume it. And they're doing this with the first light and the second light. So remember that power they get, that little burst of power they get from their final death, basically. They're feeding off of the power they get from the drops and that second light power. And they're literally stealing this. And she kind of puts together that this is like an opportunity for them to actually like destroy the Asteri, because if this is what they're feeding off of, if they cut off their ability to get first light, if they stop donating it, then that means that they'll be able to defeat them. And so this is kind of like a big moment. All right, guys, we are jumping into this last part. Please bear with me. We are almost to the end, and this is where this shit starts to get really crazy. And I just want to say if this episode's a little choppy, like we're so sorry, but we are doing our the best that we can to bring you guys this information in the best way possible. And so we are definitely gonna do that now, but like I said, just bear with me, okay? All right. So, Hunt is freaking out right now because he thinks that Bryce should be back. And Rune tells him that he's going to go look for Day. And if he's not back within 10 minutes, like they need to take off. So at this point, Bryce is running back up the stairs when she sees like this like large amount of books, and she decides to run into this area even though she knows she's short on time. So when she gets in there, she sees these doors and they're labeled by the names dawn, midnight, midday, and dusk. So she sees dusk and she like runs in because obviously it catches her attention with the whole dust truth thing. Hunt is still on the other side, freaking out because Bryce is late. And then he gets a message from Declan because remember, Declan is watching on the camera feeds during all of this, saying, like, she's okay. She just ran into this room. She's safe for now. I'll keep you posted. So Rune is down, the hall now. He's split off and he's searching for Day. And who walks up on him? Mordock. So he's like kind of caught and in a shitty situation, but there's nothing that we could do about that right now. All of a sudden, we cut to Therion and Cormac is just killing these scientists in this lab. Like he's gone rogue. Therion's like, dude, he's gone rogue. Like, what is happening? He's just killing them, even though they said that they were going to try to kill as few people as possible. And so he is like, what the fuck is going on? And at that point, Pippa shows up and just shoots Cormac. He tells Therion, like, you need to leave, like, run. And Therion at that point realizes Cormac didn't come here with the intention of leaving. Like, he knew that he was going to die. And so we cut back over to Bryce, and she's in this room and she sees a table with 7 chairs surrounding it, and there's a projector on the table, and the projector is projecting these images onto the wall. And the images are stars and basically maps of the solar system. So she looks closely at one and she sees a system she doesn't recognize, and it's labeled with, or all of them are labeled, but this one specifically is labeled Renthar Conch A.E.14,000. So they're all labeled with these dates like this. This is where I'm going to be looking at my notes a lot because this is a lot of very specific information. And I use a lot of quotes from the book right now because I just feel like this is so important to whatever is about to happen in the next book. There's also a note attached to the side of this that says, a bellicose aquatic people, primordial land life, little supply, terminated AE 1407, 7 years after the thing said the first date. There's so many like this. Bryce reads them all, realizing that these are different planets that the Asteri have conquered. She gets to one that says Ifraxia conquered A.E 680, lost AE 720. And its note says, denizens learned of our methods too quickly. We lost many to a united front, evacuated. Bryce is realizing that this means one planet, at least, was able to get rid of the Asteri. So she gets to the one of Midgard, and it says it was conquered in AE 17003. Still not knowing what AE means, she reads the note attached that says, ideal world located. Indigenous life not sustainable, but conditions prime for colonization. Have contacted others to share bounties. She realizes that the Asteri had lured all the veneer to this world from other planets to basically farm them and then feed off of them forever. She continues just clicking through the different like planets that are being projected, and she's just like, there's so many. And then she finally just happens to click on one that says hell, lost AE 17001. The note says, a dark, cold world with mighty creatures of night. They saw through our lures. Once warring factions, the royal armies of hell united and marched against us. We were overwhelmed and abandoned their world, but they gave chase. Learned from our captured lieutenants how to slip between the cracks in realms. They found us on Midgard in 17002. Tried to convince our lured prey of what we were, and some fell to their charms. We lost a third of our meals to them. War lasted until nearly 17003. They were defeated and sent back to hell, far too dangerous to allow them to access this world again, though they might try. They developed attachments to the Midgard colonist. So this kind of coincides with what Apollyon has been telling Hunt and Bryce this whole time about, Thea was aware that, the Asteri were not good, and she actually helped the Princes of Hell fight against them. And the attachments that they're talking about was Adis being attached to Thea. So Bryce realizes that everything that he said was true and that Hell really are their allies. She continues searching through all of these planets. Like, she just keeps looking because she's determined to find their home planet. Like, where the hell do the Asteri actually come from? And as she's looking, she hears a voice from behind her that basically says, you can look all you want. The answer you're looking for is not here. Our planet is so old, like we don't even remember where we come from. And when she turns around, it's Rigellus standing there talking to her. Okay, so she's caught by Rigellus, and she just straight up asks him, like, why? Why do you all do this? And he basically is like, you can't blame me for our source of nutrition. And he reveals that they wanted her to come here because it was a trap, and he wants her to use the horn to open up the rifts. So he tells her like a bunch of information here, and this is pretty important. So he tells her that she is starborn and bound to the horn, and that her ancestors used it and another Fey object to enter this world, and they stole it from the Asteri. They wanted to use Midgard as a base, and they opened it to bring their people here. They thought, the Fae thought that they were conquering new worlds, and they didn't realize that they were actually being conquered by the Asteri, and that the Asteri were using them to open these portals to other worlds so that they could conquer them as well. Queen Thea, though, and her daughters realized what was happening, but it was already too late. They were, however, able to find the hidden access points that the Asteri had kind of put across Midgard, and they shut the gates to stop the Asteri from being able to invade the other worlds, and that trapped the Asteri there. So they've been trapped in Midgard ever since. Danica had figured it out. She realized that the shifters of this world are actually Fae, but they're not exactly the same type of Fae that Bryce is. Bryce's Fae came from a beautiful land rich with magic. And the Starborn bloodline specifically came from a small isle that was a few miles from the mainland, an isle existing in near permanent twilight. Tells her only a few in her world could shift to an animal form, that the shifters actually come from another Fae planet, and all of the Fae in that world shared their form with an animal, and the Mer actually descended from them. And Bryce is like, they don't have pointed ears. And he's like, that's because we bred it out of them. It only took a little bit of time. And the Asteri did this because they felt like like making them different and pitting them against each other, they had less of a chance to work together as a team, basically, and realize what was going on and overthrow the Asteri. She then asked him about Project Thur, and he says that that was the last time someone got as close to discovering the truth as Danica did, and it didn't end well for them. I have a huge question about who this person was. So he tells her he was the one who was responsible for pointing Micah towards Danica so he could kill her for them. Bryce teleports at that point. She just takes off. Like after he tells her that he's the one who put Micah on Danica to take her out, Bryce just leaves. She teleports to Hunt. And Bryce then asked him about Project Thur, and he says that that was the last time someone got as close as Danica did to discovering the truth, and it didn't end well for them. I have a huge question about who this person is. All right. He tells her that he was the one who was responsible for sending Micah after Danica because it was an inconvenience to them and they wanted to kill her without it being obvious that it was them who did it. And at this point, Bryce just teleports out of the room. She doesn't like stick around. She makes her escape. She teleports to Hunt, but when she gets there, she finds him already chained up by the harpy. And now she's caught too. So we finally go back over to Cormac and Therian is running away. He gets caught, but he gets away again when Cormac, this poor man, gets shot again. The other five Asteri just show up out of nowhere, and Cormac literally catches fire. The fire spreads and it catches Pippa on fire, and then the mech suits catch fire until like the whole lab explodes. So Therian was able to get away, but Cormac definitely made the ultimate sacrifice and he dies. We go back to Rune, and Rune is just been badly beaten by Mordok. And the Harpy walks in and she brings in Hunt and Bryce. Mordok reveals to them that he's been following them for a while now at Rigelus's request. He mentions that it's because Hunt's scent is wrong. He doesn't smell like an angel, and then he just leaves. So the Harpy now is moving in and she goes to begin torturing Rune, and she's literally about to cut into him when who shows up and stops her? The Hind. All right, you guys, this is where shit is getting crazy. So Rune realizes pretty quickly that the Hind is Agent Day because he smells her and he's like, dude, this is familiar. So not only did she just save me, but this is the girl I've been meeting with on the bridge. And I don't know if we mentioned this earlier, but when Rune first met her, he kind of was like, she has this like familiar scent to her. And it's because she smells kind of like Hypaxia, because remember, they're sisters. So Rune is like still bound, but he's able to like get a hold of the Harpy's ankle, and the Hind and the Harpy are going back and forth, and the Harpy's like, you traitorous bitch, and the Hind is just like, you won't be alive to tell anybody. And Rune grabs her ankle and like pulls her down, and as soon as she falls, the Hind just jumps on her and attacks her and basically kills her. She then proceeds to unlock their chains, and she tells them that they have to go. She explains to all of them basically her backstory on how she didn't actually kill Sophie, and she tried to warn Rune when she heard he was coming here that it was a trap, but she knew that if she reached back out that the Asteria would realize that she was communicating with him and it wasn't safe. And as she's telling them all this, she hears Pollux coming, and she tells Bryce, I need this to look real. They can't find out I'm a double agent. And Bryce just immediately just jumps on her and starts beating the shit out of her. So when Pollux comes into the room, Bryce is still on top of the Hind and she's just beating her up. And Rune notices the Hind whisper something to Bryce. So now Lydia, as she gets Bryce off of her, picks up the sword and threatens Rune and is like, stay against the wall, back up. And Pollock starts dealing with Bryce. The three of them get chained up and they are forced out of the cell. And when Hunt reaches for Bryce, he goes to reach for her and he kind of realizes at this point, like her chains aren't actually locked. So Lydia didn't lock the chains when she put them on her. Bryce is just holding them in place. Hunt comes to the realization that everybody at this point realizes the same thing. Bryce has this important information that they came to get, and she has to get out alive. And Hunt kind of has this realization that this is the last time he's going to be holding Bryce's hand, which is just so sad. Rune is doing everything in his power. The Hind is trying to communicate with him mentally, and he's just blocking her out, which I love Rune, but it's like, what the hell are you doing, bro? And Pollux sees him staring at her, so he just like grabs her by the throat and kisses her on the neck. Ugh. And Rune realizes at this point that it's Pollux who has been the one hurting her and pulling her out of her dreams, and that she is only enduring it because it's the literal only way that she can continue to get information over to the rebels. So they're led into a room, and it is a throne room, and Rigelus is sitting up on the throne, and he tells Bryce that she's going to pay for killing another angel because he believes at this point that it was Bryce who killed the Harpy, because when Pollux walked into the room, she was attacking Lydia, and they made it look like she was the one who killed the Harpy too. When Hunt looks up, he sees his severed wings just mounted above the throne, and above his wings are Shahar's wings. Because remember when they rebelled before, Hunt had his wings cut off as punishment, and his and Shahar's wings are still just up there, basically as like bragging rights for the Asteri. After Hunt notices this, Baxian and Mordock also come into the room, and they join the Hind and the Hammer kind of off to the side. And so Bryce just starts talking out loud about how the Asteri are parasites who trick them into doing the drop so they can feed off their first light and then do the same again for their second light when they die. And Rigelus quickly realizes that she's just saying this out loud so that the others will like learn what she learned. And Declan is still monitoring the cameras. Remember that. And so when she tries to like go into the explanation about destroying the actual core of First Light that's beneath the planet, he quickly is silence. Don't say anything else. And so now at this point, Rigelus just tells them, by the way, Cormac's dead. And that's where the other Asteri are right now. And Rigelus just throws in there that he might call the Autumn King to come torture Rune. And he reveals to everybody at this point that all of Rune's tattoos, they're actually there to hide the scars that his father gave him from burning him with his magic when he was a kid. And that is just so sad and fucked up. But anyways, Bryce is just like trying to do anything, grasping at straws to get them out of this situation. And she tells Rigelus that she will open the portal for him if he lets Hunt and Rune go and agrees to leave them untouched forever. And Rigelus responds with basically, I've known about y'all's activities for a while now. I'm the one who came to your apartment that day disguised as Adis, the night that I encouraged you to join the rebels. He's also the one who sent the Reapers, so the Underking was telling the truth. And that whole situation that happened in the Bone Quarter was actually a test to try to see her true power. Hunt tries to lie very quickly and just says, we're not rebels. That's not what's happening. Celestina can actually vouch for me. And that's when Rigelus is like, oh, really? Celestina, the one who reported you to me and told me that you lied about going to visit Bryce's family in the first place, and that she saw you leave the barracks the other night heavily armed. And this is just crazy because that means Celestina, for the longest, has actually not been on their side. For a minute now, she's been betraying them and giving information to the Asteri. So I don't really like that very much. I'm so curious about what's going to happen with her. And so Rigulus tells Bryce at this point, he is just dropping a lot of information. He tells her that the star on her chest is actually a beacon to the worlds where she came from, and it sometimes glows when she gets close to other Fae who have undiluted bloodlines from the same world, like Cormac. I don't know if y'all remember, but or if I even mentioned it, but every time Bryce would get around Cormac, her star would just start glowing. And he kind of teased her about it a little bit, but now we know why. And then she brings up, she's like, well, it glows around Hunt too. And he's like, well, it also happens when you're near to your loyal companions. And he specifically refers to them as knights. I don't know why, but I feel that's important. So he then tells her that he needs to use or he needs to use her so that the star can lead them back to this world because they're trying to get back to this specific place where Bryce's people came from. They want revenge because what happened was the Fae of that world overthrew his siblings, his brethren that were ruling the planet before, and they overtook them, and now they want revenge. And this isn't their first attempt. Their initial attempt was stopped by her ancestor, who also bore the star on her chest. Important. Remember that. She says again, she will help. Okay. She's like, I'll help you if you let Hunt and Rune go. And so Rigulus agrees. He tells her that she needs to say goodbye. And so she goes up to Hunt and she gives him a hug. And he whispers in her ear, this is a direct quote. I love this quote. He says, I love you. I wish I'd said it more, but I love you, Quinlan. And our love is stronger than time, greater than any distance. Our love spans across stars and worlds. I will find you again. I promise. Once again, I love that quote, but I also just feel like it's kind of important for everything coming up in the next book. So at this point, Hunt did, quote, or did tell her that, but he also had whispered something else in her ear. And that was, he told her to leave them, leave. Like, whatever happens to us happens, but you need to get out of here. And when she goes in up to Rune, Rune tells her and whispers to her the secret that he's been holding since, the last book. He tells her what the Oracle actually told him about him being the last of his bloodline. And he's like, but I think she made a mistake. Sorry. I just feel like that's something we should take note of. I feel like she made a mistake because she couldn't have seen Bryce, because Bryce is going to be, the next queen. She has to be. So he tells her, take the Star Sword when you go. And she's hugging him. And while she's doing that, she uses a key that Lydia had slipped to her and unlocks both of their chains. Rune, in his final little message to Bryce, tells her that she needs to go to Hell through the gate and bring back the armies to help them fight. But if Apollyon's asking for too much, she shouldn't return here. Just stay, go anywhere else. Don't come back. But, if it's okay, bring him back so we can defeat the Asteri. Rune gives her the signal, which is long live the queen, and then she just grabs his sword and blasts Rigulus in the eyes, blinds him for a second with her starlight. Hunt also hurls his power at Rigulus at the same time. Bryce takes off running, and Rigulus is just chasing after her. She's running to an open gate, and she thinks it's going to take her to Hell. Hunt hits her in the back with a blast of power right where the horn is, and she tries to go she channels her power into the gate using the star on her chest, and she's unable to get through because it's warded. And so she just teleports behind Rigulus and straight up blasts him in the face with her starlight. And then she finally is able to take off running through the gate, and she disappears. Whew. Left in the room are Hunt and Rune, obviously. And Hunt has been gagged with a Gorsian stone gag and Gorsian chains around his wrist and neck. And then Baxian and Rune are also held in the same way. Because remember, Mordok's been following them. They've known for a while that Baxian is on their side. Rigulus puts Hunt on his knees before the gate, lays a glowing hand on his brow, and basically puts the slave tattoo back on him and takes his powers away. And now Hunt is a slave again. All right, guys, we made it. We're finally here to the chapter we've all been waiting for. I just want to say thank you for bearing with me and for still being here. I really hope that this helped you guys understand a lot more what was going on at the end of that book. I know that it was really complicated. I know that it took me a while to understand it. So if you need to come back, listen again, please do. I'm so excited for our video next week. So I'm just going to jump right into this part here. All right. So Bryce has woken up and she's on this like grassy lawn and she's thinking to herself, this doesn't look like she thought Hel would. She hears a male voice and he's speaking to her in a language that she doesn't really understand, but she can tell that he's telling her like, don't move. And so the male picks her up and she describes him as beautiful. And she says to him in her language, she's like, I want to be taken to Adis. And his eyes like get big when he sees the star sword on her back. She notes at this point that his hands are like all scarred up because he makes her put on a blindfold. And after he blindfolds her, he just picks her up and takes her into the sky and literally flies away with her. When they land, he sets her on a chair and she doesn't know where she is, but she notes that it smells like just so nice. And she's like, what the hell is going on? Like, this is not what I thought hell would be like. And so the male is just keeps trying to communicate with her in this language that she doesn't understand. And she keeps being like, I want to see Adis. Like, my world's in danger. Take me to him. I need to see him. And finally, her blindfold is pulled off and she sees more people walk into the room and they're all speaking the same language that she can't understand. Bryce tries using the only other language that she knows at this point, which is the ancient language of the Starborn Fae. It might be of the Fae in general. And remember, Bryce knows this language because she was studying it to be able to just understand different things that she was seeing at the gallery. And there's actually a scene earlier in this book where she's reading the plaques on these statues to her parents because she's the only one who speaks the language. So she starts speaking that and she's asking like, is this hell? I need to see Adis. And she notes that one of the women who walked into the room looks very similar to Fury. Like she has the same coloring and the same look. And this woman just looks at the sword and starts speaking to the male who she originally saw, asking him to take his knife out. And as soon as he does, they realize it's literally the twin to the star sword. And he draws it, and the star sword begins to glow with this white light. And then the knife starts to glow with this dark light. And so the female that looks like Fury finally responds to Bryce and she says, no one has spoken this language here in 15,000 years. Remember, Ellie told you to pay attention to that. So she doesn't know who Adis is and she's not in hell. And then a new man, one that we haven't met yet, walks into the room with another female. And Bryce immediately takes note that he looks exactly like her brother, except he has a little bit of a darker skin tone. Other than that, he has the same eyes, same face as her brother, Rune. And she tells Amryn in this language, she's like, I didn't mean to come here. I meant to go to hell. My mate, my planet is in grave danger. I need help. I need help from you all. I need help from hell. I need help from anybody, but I have to get back. And at this point, the new male that walked into the room, looks at her and responds in her language, hello, Bryce Quinlan. My name is Rysand. And I almost died. Okay. All right, guys. We made it. that was the important information that you needed to know. Please feel free to ask any questions below in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and cut back to our original podcast episode now so Ellie can explain the epilogue. And like I said, just thank you for being here with me. I understand this book so much better now, so I hope I was able to help you guys too.
Anyway, yeah, that was a shock. I can't believe she left the book with literally the line, "My name is Rysand. Are you?"
Yeah, Sarah J. Maas really knew what she was doing with that one.
Yeah,
She
so
has us waiting for 2 years for this freaking next book to come out just because of that one line. And now, if you guys know anything about the sentence teaser that was released earlier this week, we just don't know what's going to be going on in this book, dude. Like, I
yeah,
can't. I'm so excited to see like these characters like be in the same world as each other and just like how, like, but at the same time, like, I'm so terrified about like where we left Hunt and Rune, like in the dungeons, locked up in these Gorsian fucking like like shackles, basically, like unable to use their powers. Hunt's a slave again. Like they just discovered all this information about the Asteri, and it just like I don't know. I don't know. I'm not ready, but I can't wait at the same time.
same. I'm really excited. We want to talk a lot about that last chapter, but we're going to wait until our theories video, or this video is going to be a million hours. I do really quick want to speak about the epilogue because it is a little bit important. So it's from Ethan's point of view, and he doesn't know what the fuck is going on because he's back in Crescent City. He didn't go because he wanted to protect this wolf lady. So Flynn calls him and he informs him that Rune and Hunt are in the Asteri dungeons. And he also learns that Bryce has disappeared into a fucking portal. So he breaks into the astronomer's shop, house, whatever, and because he still wants to try to save this wolf girl. And there's a moment at the very end where he's trying to like wake her up, and she finally opens her fucking eyes and like wakes up completely. And as of now, she is the last known heir to the Fenrir line.
Ooh, ooh,
And
ooh.
that's where I can't,
Yeah.
y'all.
Yeah, this book
Okay.
just it is a lot. It was a lot, especially the end. I'm sorry if it was confusing or it
It is
wasn't the best
confusing.
explanation. Like I said, I highly suggest rereading like the last if you don't
Mhm.
reread the whole book, reread those last like 100 to
Few
80 pages.
chapters,
Like it's
for
a
sure.
lot, dude. Like like even me, like I've read it multiple times and listened to it and I still am not 100% sure the way and like
Yeah.
exactly how everything goes down. So um I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like Ellie said, we cannot wait to get into our theories next week. We have some really good ones about some things that we think are going to go down in Crescent City 3 as well as just, you know, in the mass verse in general. So please stay
Yes.
tuned for that.
Yeah. Trying to think. We will not be releasing an episode on the 30th of January because we will be busy reading, as
Mhm.
well as I'm sure most of you will. So there's really no point in releasing an episode, but we will be reading this book as soon as we can. And we're going to be making an episode of our initial reaction ASAP. It should be out by the next week. I want to say that weekend, but
Mhm.
we'll see. It'll be out that weekend, let's be real. But
Yeah, we're going to try our best to get it out like Friday or
yeah.
Saturday. We're going to try our best. So,
Yeah, and after that, we will be doing our next series, which will be Akatar. We're going to take
mhm.
a little break from Crescent City. We will revisit it and probably do a little bit more in detail, like deep dives about it, but
Yeah.
because it's hard to cover that whole book in one episode. Like what?
Yeah, this is going to be crazy long, but I do think that like she said, like we're going to do CC3, we're going to have our initial reactions. We may even have like one additional episode or
Yeah.
something like that. We'll see how long it takes us to kind of say what we want to say. Then we will be switching to Akatar, and after that at some point we will probably come back to Crescent City and maybe in like smaller parts talk about the foreshadowing and the different things that are
Hmm.
set up because we both kind of believe too that there is going to be another Crescent City in the mix eventually as well. So yeah, just stay tuned for that. Like we said at the beginning of the video, please make sure that if you're still here with us that you like drop us a comment, let us know what you thought of this video, let us know if there's any other questions that you have about anything that we talked about today, please subscribe as well. And if you're listening on podcast apps, we would love it if you would rate and review us. We are still trying to grow and build this community, and those things really help us. So, like I said, we would just greatly appreciate it if you would take the time to do that.
Yeah, okay. I think we're pretty much done, but I will leave us with the quote, light it up.
Light it up, light it up, light it up. All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.